After Chen Ao absorbed this wave of resources, his foundation increased once more. His divine body expanded to 21.5 light-years, and the origin essence of his small universe had also reached its limit. This was a limit for now. In fact, his consumption of resources had already become extremely low. First, because of his 100000-fold gene, his small universe automatically reached the maximum size for his current realm. Other Void True Gods still had to start from a small universe 1 billion light-years in size and improve step by step, while he directly had 10 billion light-years. This directly affected the amount of origin essence the small universe could contain. His 10 billion light-year small universe had an origin essence limit 1,000 times that of a 10 light-year one. This meant that his comprehension of law origins was 100 times faster than others, and when he faced the critical threshold of law comprehension, he could break through more easily. As for the small universe, he had taken full advantage of it because of his 100000-fold gene. And as for the divine body, for other powerhouses, one Earth Source crystal could only increase it by 10,000 kilometers. Even with a 90000-fold gene, they could only increase it by 15,000 kilometers. For him, however, it was directly 100,000 kilometers. For the same divine body, the resources he needed were only 1/10 of what others needed. That was remarkably little. Other protagonists consume resources 10 times, 100 times, or even 1,000 or 10,000 times more than ordinary people, while I only need 1/10 of others. Maybe I simply don't have the fate of a protagonist. Consuming less than others. How could that still have the dignity of a protagonist? After such a great leap forward, Chen Ao stayed in the Haotian sect for a full 1,000 years. During this period, Chen Ao continuously tested his own strength, trying to push every bit of power to its extreme. Meanwhile, his avatar remained in the scripture pavilion as the guardian elder. Because the Haotian sect recruited once every epoch, only one group of newcomers could arrive within 10,000 years. These newcomers always imagined that the scripture pavilion contained incomplete supreme secret arts, or even that Chen Ao was deliberately testing someone. Every epoch, Chen Ao had to remind them once again they were only wishful thinking. Chen Ao had long since stopped paying attention to those fellows who dreamed of being protagonists. After all, countless newcomers appeared every epoch, and most of them could not even survive 3 years. The so-called 3-year deadline was all fake. On this day, while Chen Ao was idly at his post, a law venerable, who looked very much like an ordinary human, walked to the entrance of the scripture pavilion. Even in the outer sect, a law venerable was relatively weak. But the moment Chen Ao saw this law venerable, he felt that this person was extraordinary. "Hey kid, what's your name?" Chen Ao called out to the law venerable. As a Void True God, he was already an old-timer, no longer a child. The law venerable was stunned when Chen Ao called him, because he had already been in the Haotian sect's outer sect for 3 epochs. If he did not continue to improve his strength, he would be expelled. He never expected that the scripture pavilion elder, famous for his coldness, would actually notice him. Reporting to elder, "My name is Yi Chen Site." Unexpectedly, he did not flatteringly rush over like ordinary people when he heard Chen Ao's call. Instead, he was extremely calm and appeared remarkably aloof. Chen Ao looked at this Yi Chen, and immediately felt a thick, pretentious aura surging toward him. "Yi Chen, have you just made a breakthrough in your strength? Or was it just last night?" Yi Chen was startled. "Elder knows. Then did you just defeat 3 outer sect disciples of the same level who always looked down on you?" Yi Chen nodded. "Yes, those 3 humiliated me too deeply. I couldn't bear it any longer, so I had to make a move." Hearing Yi Chen say this, Chen Ao immediately felt there could be no mistake. This sense of righteous justification, this feeling of being inexplicably targeted. It was definitely him. At this moment, Yi Chen could not help getting excited, because Chen Ao seemed to know him very well. Could it be that the powerful elder wanted to accept him as a disciple? He was merely a law venerable. If he could be accepted as a disciple by an outer sect elder, at least at the high void level, his future would be limitless. Taking a deep breath, Yi Chen suppressed his excitement. "May I ask what instructions the elder has?" Chen Ao shook his head. "Nothing. I just asked casually." "Alright, go busy yourself." Yi Chen was dumbfounded. "After asking so many questions, even making me pour out my experiences, you just tell me to stand aside? Could it be that I still haven't met the elder's requirements? It must be so. The elder understands me so well. There must be a reason. He must think highly of me. I need to keep performing and strive for the elder's favor." Originally, Yi Chen had not cared much about Chen Ao. After all, those who wanted to become Chen Ao's disciple numbered at least 8,000, if not 10,000, yet all of them had been ruthlessly driven away. The old-timers wouldn't pay any attention to Chen Ao. Only the newcomers kept tirelessly believing they were protagonists. However, now Yi Chen could not remain calm either, because Chen Ao might have been watching him for a long time. Perhaps there really was a chance. Yi Chen will definitely become a supreme powerhouse and stand at the utmost peak of the origin continent. Chen Ao did not care about Yi Chen's subsequent inner thoughts. He only wondered if this Yi Chen had obtained some kind of golden finger. It could let a useless waste defy heaven and change their fate, rising step by step. Tisk tisk, maybe in the future he will even surpass me. Chen Ao even felt the urge to take him as a disciple and then scheme for benefits. Forget it. Protagonists are all children of destiny. It's not impossible for a law lord to turn the tables on me, avoid true God. Better not stir up trouble. It was mainly because he had been rather idle recently. His true body was absorbing earth source crystals while this avatar naturally had nothing to do. Time continued to flow and 1,000 years passed quickly. Chen Ao's true body departed from the Haoyan sect and headed toward the Monli tribe. He did not plan to leave his true body in the Haoyan sect, or the incident at the Haoshi battlefield would repeat itself. That would be too troublesome. He simply went with his true body, but the one going to the battlefield would still be his avatar. If those highly ranked people still tried to stop him, they could not blame him for using reason to convince them. In a place Chen Ao did not notice, Haoshi God King quietly observed him. His realm was too high. Even when staying close to Chen Ao could not detect him. And as a God King who spanned 200 million light-years, it was too easy for him to split off an avatar of several dozen light-years. Chen Ao had always been famous for being big. He often disdained others for being too small, even saying they would be too thin to fit into his pores. But now, before Haoshi God King Chen Ao had become the one who was considered thin. Heaven's cycles always turn. This little fellow dares to act so wildly on the Monli battlefield. Is he this crazy? Haoshi God King was greatly shocked. He thought Chen Ao would secretly hunt the beast force lifeforms one by one, but he had never imagined that Chen Ao would be this crazy. It was truly crazy. The moment he reached the Monli tribe, he split into 10 divine power avatars, each 1 light-year in size, and began wantonly slaughtering the Monli tribe. The killing efficiency of those 10 avatars was terrifying. After all, except for the top-ranked fellows, everyone else suffered a one-slash-death. Watching this, Haoshi God King exclaimed repeatedly, "It's really convenient to be able to change divine power auras." Chen Ao killed wantonly, and in just 5 days he slew over 10,000 void experts of the Monli tribe. By the time the Monli tribe received the news, far too many of their experts had already died. This time, of course, they could no longer remain seated. They directly dispatched 3 top 100 ranked experts to hunt down Chen Ao's avatars. As top 100 ranked experts, their beast bodies all exceeded 5 light-years. Overwhelmingly powerful. Meanwhile, on the Haoyan sect side, the top 100 expert responsible for overseeing the battlefield was named Zanku. His rank was a bit higher than AIMO's, reaching number 51. However, from number 100 to number 8, the gap was not very large. They all possessed primary eternal strength. Only the gap between number 8 and number 7 was huge, because the Haoyan sect's number 7 had intermediate eternal strength, and had created an intermediate eternal level secret art. The top 7 were all at the intermediate eternal level. As for the Monli tribe, they had a few more void experts at the intermediate eternal level, 11 in all. It wasn't that the Monli tribe was stronger. It was simply that in these past few reincarnation cycles, the Monli tribe had produced stronger geniuses. AIMO, don't you want resources? This time an opportunity has come. Zanku laughed heartily. AIMO had arrived at the Monli tribe battlefield only a few decades earlier. Zanku and AIMO were quite close, so he had a general idea of AIMO's situation. Of course, AIMO only said he had encountered powerful outsiders, and his foundation had been almost emptied, so he needed to replenish it. As for the details, including how even his underwear had been stolen, he would never say them even if beaten to death. However, AIMO was after all a prominent figure of the Haoyan sect, so he could not casually attack members of the Monli tribe. Chen Ao could hit and run, but AIMO could not run away. AIMO could not run away. Oh, what opportunity! AIMO was also thinking longingly about grabbing a batch of resources because he was really too poor right now. Even the expenses to restore his divine body had been borrowed. If he did not repay soon, interest would compound, and he would become the Haoyan sect's biggest debtor. This time a lot of people from the Monli tribe have been killed, probably more than 10,000. All of them were killed by foreign divine power lifeforms. The Monli tribe hopes we can help. Afterwards there will be plenty of benefits. When AIMO heard Zanku's news, his expression immediately turned very bad. What was this sense of déjà vu? How many outsiders are there? AIMO asked. According to the Monli tribe's information, there are estimated to be 10 arrivals. There might be an error of 1 or 2. After all, they are outsiders, and beast force lifeforms are not very good at distinguishing divine power lifeforms. 10. AIMO's expression recovered significantly. 10 people or 10 avatars of 1 person. Zanku looked at AIMO strangely. AIMO, what are you talking about? How could avatars be casually sent to fight? Even your and my avatars are very weak. Don't change the subject. Just tell me, is the divine power aura of the other side the same? Of course not. I'm certain it's 10 people. Only then did AIMO finally feel relieved. Since there were so many people, it definitely was not him. That man was only 1 person. Damn it. I was robbed, and I don't even know his name. He could only refer to him as that man. Truly infuriating. The the shadow that man left on him always felt inescapable. It was too terrifying. Advanced eternal combat power. Was this really something a void-level expert could achieve? As far as he knew, among the surrounding hundreds with God King strength, the strongest void true god only had intermediate eternal combat power. Although he was very strong within intermediate eternal, he could never reach advanced eternal. And that man was terrifying beyond compare. Are we going? Perhaps killing a few outsiders will give us quite a harvest, and afterwards we can demand another considerable sum from the Monli tribe. Alright then, let's go take a look. AIMO also felt the situation was somewhat similar to the previous Hausher battlefield, but it was only similar. The numbers were so different. AIMO and Zanku headed directly toward one of Chen Ao's avatars. On the Monli tribe side, Chen Ao had already been surrounded. Facing those ranked in the top 200, Chen Ao still did not intend to fight them head-on. The avatars were extremely fragile. It was an insoluble problem. Even a god king could not solve it. Otherwise Zuoshank could have simply sent countless avatars to the Universe Sea with no need to go in his true body. Even if his combat power could reach eternal high and be even stronger with the Qijin Sea at his disposal, when an avatar fought a beast force lifeform of eternal elementary combat power, the likely outcome was mutual annihilation. The opponent would be cut down in an instant, yet he would lose the avatar because his soul collapsed. Hence one of Chen Ao's avatars was leading those highly ranked experts around while the other avatars kept on killing. And so the Monli tribe's experts were led around by Chen Ao's avatar for a long time. In the end, after more than half a month, they found that another 20,000 plus void-level members of the Monli tribe had died. How could they endure that? So besides asking the Monli tribe's experts for reinforcements, they also hoped the Haotian sect would intervene. To that end, they promised many benefits. Asking the Haotian sect for aid was a last resort. The Monli tribe only had so many experts in the top 200 scattered across different places, and many were out on training journeys. Moreover, many simply refused to come because they were focused on cultivation, so only a handful could reach the battlefield. They had truly been pushed into a corner. Chen Ao watched the Monli tribe members endlessly chasing after him and just wanted to laugh. It was useless for one opponent to fix his eyes on him. To keep watch over one of his avatars required at least 3 or 4 experts ranked in the top 200. After all, one person could watch him but could not stop his killing, so what was the point? To stop him would require 3 or 4 top 200 experts. Therefore, to completely guard against his 10 avatars, one would need at least 30 or 40 top 200 void experts. But top 200 experts were not cabbages to be summoned at will. Many of them did not even bother to respond. 16 people can watch at most 5 of my avatars. The remaining 5 are enough to kill the void true gods of the Monli tribe and gather resources. By now he had slain 34,000 void true gods, and collected resources worth a little over 1 trillion, enough to expand his divine body by 1 light year. If this continues within at most half a month, after another 20 or 30,000 kills, the Monli tribe's void true gods will collapse and flee this place. If the true body could remain still, that was for the best, as acting rashly was not entirely safe. If he really met a powerful enemy, he could not run from giving up an avatar was acceptable. While Chen Ao's 5 freely hunting avatars were slaughtering AIMO, and Zanku led a group of people and found Chen Ao. Chen Ao saw AIMO, and a playful smile immediately appeared on his face. This fellow had actually come here too. Zanku looked at Chen Ao's beastman avatar, and said directly, "Friend, by wantonly killing on my Haotian sect's territory, you have touched the interests of my Haotian sect. I advise you to surrender without resistance." Zanku naturally was not afraid of Chen Ao. With AIMO beside him, even against a top 7 expert, they could retreat safely. Their divine bodies were both enormous, so when the gap in strength was only 1 level, there was no real danger. Thus Zanku was more confident than AIMO had been. Rather than driving Chen Ao away, he wanted Chen Ao to surrender. At this moment, the playful smile appeared on Chen Ao's face. AIMO immediately caught sight of it. He had actually stayed alert all along because he really did not want to see that man again. But damn it, he felt he had run headfirst into the barrel of a gun once again. The man showed no reaction at all to Zanku's words. Instead he looked at AIMO with that smile. "I can't be wrong. It's definitely that man. That man has come to the Monli battlefield." Zanku saw Chen Ao's beastman avatar unresponsive, and thought Chen Ao was afraid. So he immediately said, "Friend, as long as you don't cause chaos, my Haotian sect won't touch you. We also follow rules. It's just that you have killed too many, so we must deal with you a little." At this point Chen Ao looked at Zanku. "Do you think you've got me? Ha ha ha, if you think you can escape from the 2 of us, then go ahead and try." Zanku was brimming with confidence. AIMO, however, quickly stepped back a few paces. "Zanku, I suddenly remembered. My master's wife is in labor. I have to go home and check on her." Zanku was dumbfounded. "AIMO, what nonsense are you talking about? Didn't your master's wife fall several epochs ago?" "Oh, I didn't explain clearly. Actually, my master found another partner," AIMO said impatiently. "So I need to go back first." Zanku watched Aimo turn to leave and swiftly grabbed hold of him. Aimo, what's the matter with you? Don't you lack resources? That guy has killed several thousand void true gods of the Monli tribe. If we get our hands on his resources, won't we have resources? Aimo rolled his eyes. He feared that Zanku had gotten two things wrong. First, the resources on that man were probably not just from several thousand Monli tribe void true gods. Perhaps there were also resources from 10,000 plus Sure Kingdom void true gods. Second, I think we won't be robbing him but sending resources to him. Zanku, do you trust your brother or not? Aimo quickly sent a voice transmission to Zanku, who was anxious to seek death. Of course. We have been good brothers for several Kulpa years. Of course I trust you. If you trust me, let's leave right now. Pretend nothing happened. Don't pay attention to the Monli tribe's request. Zanku was puzzled. Why? Why not take the resources that are right in hand? If you trust your brother, don't ask. Now leave quickly. Aimo looked at Chen Ao's avatar in the distance, unhurried and composed, and became even more certain that this fellow was that man. So now he only wanted Zanku to leave with him, or otherwise the consequences would be unpredictable. Sending resources was a small matter, losing their lives would be a pointless death. Zanku looked at Aimo, then at Chen Ao's distant avatar, his eyes full of confusion. What exactly was going on? At that moment Chen Ao spoke. Aimo, does that suit of armor fit you? Aimo's face went pale. This was his final shred of dignity. If Chen Ao said it aloud here, he would be ashamed to face anyone for all eternity. Ahem, sir, we have no intention to offend. We're leaving now. After saying this, Aimo pulled Zanku and left. Feeling Aimo's strength, Zanku did not refuse. Chen Ao paid no attention to this small incident. This was not his true body. If the other side really attacked, he would only be able to retreat. But once his true body arrived, there would be no such good fortune for them. In the distance, Zanku was even more confused. Aimo, what exactly is wrong with you? You seem very afraid of that guy. It's not fear. I just don't want to fight that man. Aimo knew he had to explain. What level do you think that person is? Eternal elementary, right? Ha, I can tell you clearly, he is eternal high. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Zanku cried out in shock. He had never heard of a void-level eternal high. To be honest, I didn't believe it at first either, but then I fought him and was directly crushed by him. Moreover, his divine body is at least 10-odd light-years across. Those 10 foreign hunters are all his avatars. Zanku fell silent. Although he still didn't believe it, considering the man's battle record, it seemed more reasonable if they were avatars. Could he be the man you mentioned before? Yes, that man. This time Zanku said nothing more and followed Aimo away, but his trembling expression showed he was not so calm. Eternal high. How could it be eternal high? The slaughter continued, and the Monli tribe's void true gods kept dying in great numbers. The Monli tribe's void experts tried to urge Zanku, but the messages they sent out sank into the deep sea with no response at all. Everyone, what do we do now? With just a dozen or so of us, we can't possibly stop his slaughter. They came in a group to kill us. Damn it. If only the experts of my Monli tribe were gathered, we would have killed all these outsiders on the spot. The leading four-eyed beast force lifeform said in a low voice, "What do we do now? So many outsiders have come. If we don't deal with them, we will definitely be punished by the tribe's higher-ups afterwards." Deal with them? How do we deal with them? We chased them very hard, but there are so many of them. How can we stop them? In my opinion, let the tribe's eternal true god make a move. Although they could match eternal elementary, it was only in name and only against an ordinary eternal who did not know the divine power burning secret art. Powerful eternals from strong sects all knew eternal level divine power burning secret arts, so they were far stronger. An eternal intermediate with divine power burning secret arts could crush them outright. If it were an eternal high or even an eternal peak, they could kill them casually. The tribe's high-ranking experts won't come here. This place can only be handled by void-level combatants. Otherwise, once our tribe's eternals come, the Haotian sect's eternals will also make a move. Even if the other side are outsiders, the Haotian sect, in order to maintain order, will definitely not stand idly by. Then what should we do? There are only so many void-level experts. The leading four-eyed beast force lifeform said, "Better to cut off one finger than to wound all 10. The 16 of us gathered together to focus on besieging and killing one. Spend some time and kill these outsiders one by one." They had considered this before, but their original plan was simply to drive Chen Ao away. The price of killing him would probably be considerable. Yet they never expected Chen Ao to be so greedy that he kept killing without end, forcing them to resort to killing. I know what you're thinking. You're worried about the danger of dying. Since that's the case, let the three of us take the lead while you attack from behind. Our beast bodies are huge. Even if that person's strength is high, we can certainly kill him. Even though more than 10 were besieging one, their mad chase in recent days had made them feel that the opponent's strength was extraordinary, probably stronger than all of them. If he was stronger than them, there was a chance he would turn around and kill them. This was why they would rather drive Chen Ao away than fight him to the death. Alright, since Four Eyes has said so, let's do it. Having made the decision, more than a dozen top 200 Beast Force Void experts of the Monli tribe quickly gathered, intending to kill one of Chen Ao's avatars. Chen Ao quickly sensed this abnormality. Tisk, this is a fight to the death. The true body that had been hiding outside could only move now. He couldn't really retreat. There were still 20 or 30,000 Void-level fighters on the battlefield to kill, and he couldn't waste them. Nor did he want to waste several avatars. Not to mention that every avatar contained a huge amount of divine power, and those avatars also carried many resources. If they were lost, all that killing would have been in vain. I have to make a trip again, oh what a nuisance. If possible, he really did not want to fight with the top 200 opponents, but since it concerned benefits, he had to act. They make a move against me for their own benefit, and I make a move against them for mine. There is no right or wrong. We are all just struggling to grow stronger. His true body moved, because the enemy wanted to surround and kill his avatar. Chen Ao could easily know where they had gathered. The other 9 avatars continued. The hunt resumed, and one of the Serpentman clones had already been surrounded by more than a dozen Beastman lifeforms from the Brute Force tribe. The Serpentman Chen Ao was being hunted down. Outsider, today you die without question. Don't even think about running, or with so many of us surrounding you, you have no chance. Since you dared to kill so many experts of my Brute Force tribe, you deserve death. All around were the top 200 experts of the Brute Force tribe closing in on Chen Ao's Serpentman clone from every direction. Although the Serpentman clone was fast, the enemy had come prepared. They had already locked onto Chen Ao's movements and deliberately created this encirclement. So the best Chen Ao could do was stall for a little time. In the end, he would still have to face them head-on. However, just when the members of the Brute Force tribe were certain they would kill Chen Ao's true body descended, stepping on 7-colored auspicious clouds and clad in golden armor. The Serpentman clone smiled and hid behind Chen Ao's true body. The Brute Force tribe members were not surprised to see Chen Ao arrive. After all, the other side had 10 people, so it was only natural that someone would come to the rescue. If that were not the case, why would they need 16 people to surround and kill one? The fact that only one outsider came to the rescue was already beyond expectations. Even if all 10 had come, they could understand it. When that time came, they would simply seize one and kill him through sheer force. That was exactly why those Brute Force tribe experts feared they might fall. The gap in numbers was simply not large enough. If they counterattacked, death would come all too easily. When Chen Ao's true body descended, Divine King Haisha noticed it at the first moment. In truth, when more than a dozen Brute Force tribe experts were hunting down Chen Ao's clone, and Chen Ao's true body began to move, Divine King Haisha sensed it. As a Divine King, he could observe a tremendous area. Everything about Chen Ao was within his control. Do you know how hard this old man has to work to take in a disciple? The main problem was that Chen Ao had not been nurtured by him from a young age. Honestly speaking, Chen Ao was already an expert now. There was little Haisha could give him. Otherwise, why would taking him as a disciple require so much trouble? For now, I'll build up some good karma and save him a few more times. Later, when I take him as my disciple, it will not seem too abrupt. This was something Divine King Haisha had anticipated long ago. Chen Ao's true body was inevitably going to clash with the Brute Force tribe's top 200 experts. It was a conflict of interests impossible to avoid. At that moment, Divine King Haisha sent a message to an eternal peak beast power lifeform of the Brute Force tribe. The message was anonymous, and its contents described Chen Ao's achievements. There was no embellishment. It only recounted everything Chen Ao had done on the Hausher battlefield. Upon seeing the message, that eternal peak beast power lifeform immediately reported it to the higher-ups. The answer he received was to seize an opportunity and kill Chen Ao. Even if it caused some conflict with the Haoyan sect, it did not matter. As an eternal peak beast power lifeform, if he struck with full force, then, even with Chen Ao's 21.5 light-year divine body, at most 3 attacks would be enough to completely annihilate Chen Ao. Actually, this was calculated based on annihilating the divine body. If he truly went all out, because the gap in combat power was too great, there was a high chance a single strike could directly shatter Chen Ao's true god heart. In such a short time, unless the Haoyan sect was fully prepared, it would be impossible to rescue him in time. Afterward, even offering apologies to the Haoyan sect would be acceptable. A void-level expert who can actually reach eternal high-tier battle strength. At the very least, he will become a Chaos Sovereign in the future, and there is even a chance he could achieve Hunyuan. This sort of genius must be exterminated. So when Chen Ao came face-to-face with the 16 void-level experts of the Brute Force tribe, the eternal peak beast power lifeform had already received permission from the higher-ups, and was heading to the battlefield to kill Chen Ao. There were only so many Chaos Sovereigns. Once one of them got close, the Haoyan sect would notice. But as an eternal peak lifeform, drawing closer to the battlefield would not attract attention. Then he would strike quickly before the Haoyan sect could react. While watching Chen Ao casually slaughter the top few dozen void-level experts of the Brute Force tribe, Divine King Haisha looked with a smile toward that eternal peak beast power life form, who had already drawn close to the battlefield. At the very earliest I must wait until after that eternal peak expert from the brute force tribe completes his first attack before I can make my move. Otherwise it will look too fake. He planned to let the brute force tribe try to kill Chen Ao and then he would save Chen Ao. Saving Chen Ao was only to build a good karmic connection and to prepare for taking a disciple in the future. He had no intention of taking Chen Ao as a disciple right now. Otherwise all of this would appear too deliberate. He could think highly of Chen Ao, but he could not let Chen Ao discover that it was Haisha who had leaked Chen Ao's information to the brute force tribe. Of course, as a divine king, he could do whatever he wished. Yet his purpose was not simply to take a disciple. He wanted to nurture a future divine king, and become a companion who could be entrusted with his back. Naturally, he did not want his future companion to have any estrangement from him. As for Chen Ao not being able to withstand that eternal peak beast power lifeform's full force strike. So what? If he died then he died. A dead genius was no genius. It would only mean Chen Ao did not meet the requirements to become his disciple, and lacked the fortune to become Hunyuan. Even if he died it would not affect Haisha at all. Little fellow, it all depends on whether you are strong enough. If you aren't strong enough then dying is just your bad luck. If you don't die that counts as earning my approval. In the future with my nurturing your rate of growth will increase countless times over, so you won't be losing out either. Divine King Haisha was also above the battlefield quietly waiting for the scene he wanted to see. Chen Ao was extremely powerful. Facing those mighty void-level experts of the brute force tribe was as simple for him as slaughtering chickens and sheep. And the sight of Chen Ao casually killing one of the top 200 void-level experts was also seen by that eternal peak beast power lifeform. So it truly is as I thought. He really does possess eternal high-tier battle strength. In that case I can't let you live. Before the words even faded the eternal peak beast power lifeform thrust out with all his might using his gray staff. That staff seemed to cross countless voids piercing directly from outside the battlefield into the middle of it. At that moment Chen Ao's entire mind was focused on killing the void-level experts of the brute force tribe. And at that moment a huge gray staff phantom suddenly appeared behind Chen Ao. The phantom shot toward Chen Ao at a speed that was nearly impossible to track. Chen Ao's scalp immediately went numb and a shudder ran through his entire body. This feeling of facing a deadly crisis was something Chen Ao had not experienced in who knows how many years. Even though his divine body sensed it, he could not react in time. The clone that had been hiding behind him now charged straight at the staff phantom. But when the 1 light-year divine body collided with the staff phantom, it was like a drop of water striking a boulder. It could not shake it in the slightest. Chen Ao's true body was now extremely close to the staff phantom. He did not even have time to turn around nor time to raise his weapon in defense. Chen Ao could already feel it. In that instant his thoughts raced. He even considered transforming into a beast power lifeform to withstand the blow because if he could transform he would definitely be able to endure it. But there was too little time. He could not change his life form. Is this death? For the first time Chen Ao felt just how enormous the gap was between himself and true experts. Boom! The staff phantom struck Chen Ao's true body solidly. The powerful aura of his true body began to dissipate rapidly. A sign that his divine body was being destroyed in large amounts. What a pity! My true body only has an 11.5 light-year divine body, or otherwise I would still have a chance to survive. The staff phantom continued to press forward. Annihilating a large amount of his divine power was not the end. The staff phantom intended to directly obliterate his true god heart. Only then did Chen Ao truly experience what it felt like for his true god heart to be attacked directly. It was like the time when he was weak and his soul was savagely torn apart. Dong! A ringing sound like a great bell echoed endlessly in Chen Ao's ears. His true god heart trembled ceaselessly. As long as the true god heart shattered, no matter how large the divine body was, death would come instantly. If the true god heart broke, the soul of the clone would also be completely annihilated in an instant. I really am going to die. The true god heart trembled more and more violently. Yet after a 10,000th of a second Chen Ao thought he was dead. But then he discovered that he had not died. That's it. That was Chen Ao's first reaction. Although his true god heart had been shaken to the verge of collapse by that brutal heavy strike, in truth, there was not the slightest sign of damage. It was like someone slamming a huge hammer into a tall building, or the building swayed and shook, but the hammer simply could not smash through it. Could it be related to the 100,000-fold genes? My miniature universe was directly maxed out, and it has grown so large that even the world beast cannot devour it. The world beast could devour the primordial source, and even the primordial universe could not resist it. Yet Chen Ao's miniature universe could. That was enough to prove that his miniature universe was even more stable than the primordial universe itself. Heh, seems like I'm tougher than I imagined. My true god heart is actually this unyielding. Truly worthy of me, a real man. What did it matter if his divine power was annihilated? Restoring 1 light-year of divine body only cost 100 million contribution points, and he could earn that back by casually killing a few people. Even if all of his divine power were annihilated, what was there to fear? He could fully restore himself several thousand times over. An 5 light-year divine body, and I lost 7 full light-years in one go. Chen Ao snapped back to reality and was shaken. Losing 7 light-years of divine body in one moment meant that in only 3 or 4 more hits, he would be finished. At that point, even if his true god heart was extremely stable, it would be useless. In the distance, that eternal peak existence wore a confused expression. His full force strike had actually failed to pierce Chen Ao's true god heart, and that strike of his had been extremely powerful. He could even feel his staff touch Chen Ao's true god heart. The staff struck the true god heart and made it wobble many times. But despite shaking many times, it simply could not be pierced. Since I can't pierce your true god heart, I'll annihilate all of your divine power. I can sense that the divine power he has left definitely cannot withstand my next attack. So the second attack soon descended. Even from across the void, his attack frequency was extremely fast. Ordinary experts could not react at all. Even if a Chaos Sovereign was guarding on the other side, there would not be enough time. At worst, he could apologize later. However, just as the Eternal Peak Beast Power Lifeform was preparing to strike a second time, a sudden surge of divine power aura flooded the entire battlefield. Chen Ao was about to use teleportation and try to escape. After all, even if he knew the enemy was formidable, he still had to make an effort to save himself. But before he could move, he felt the suppression of a higher being's aura. This suppression was not a suppression of combat power, but one of lifeform rank. A divine king, or rather a Hunyuan lifeform, has descended. A Chaos Sovereign seemed only one rank below a divine king, but in reality the gap was enormous. It was fair to say the two could not even be considered the same kind of creature. A Chaos Sovereign was still a divine power lifeform, while a divine king was a Hunyuan lifeform. Why would a divine king suddenly descend? Chen Ao looked at the void above in confusion. At that moment, a colossal black humanoid figure filled the entire void. How dare you? You actually dared to strike at a void-level expert of my Haotian sect on the battlefield. The Haisha God King watched expressionlessly as the Beast Force Eternal attacked Chen Ao, and he saw Chen Ao's divine body shatter in an instant. As a God King, even in that moment of absolute crisis, he could have reached out and saved Chen Ao, and yet he refrained. If Chen Ao died, it merely proved that Chen Ao was not strong enough. Geniuses held no meaning for him. Only the truly strong mattered. Afterward, the Haisha God King was astonished to discover that the Beast Force Eternal's weapon had struck against Chen Ao's true god heart again, and again, yet it simply could not shatter it. This little fellow's true god heart is so unyielding. Is it some secret art? Had it been a Chaos Sovereign, even he would be tempted at this moment. After all, even a Chaos heart is in danger of being shattered. A true god heart that can endure attacks several levels above one's own cultivation is probably even more precious than a colossal divine body spanning tens of billions of light years. For a god king like himself, however, these things meant nothing. As a god king, a primordial source lifeform, he was flawless and complete. Unless his power was exhausted, any such ostentatious tricks were utterly pointless. As the Beast Force Eternal prepared to strike a second time, the Avatar made its move immediately. How dare you? A single rebuke, and the Beast Force lifeform at the pinnacle of the Eternal Realm was wholly suppressed at the level of life itself, stiffening in place, unable to move a single inch. A God King dealing with an Eternal need not even lift a hand. A mere wisp of life aura is enough to ensnare them. Chen Ao gazed at the colossal dark figure high above the void, his eyes gleaming with brilliance. So this was a God King, the equal of a true God in the primordial universe. Once one became a God King, barring self-destruction, it was exceedingly difficult to fall. The next moment Chen Ao felt his body being drawn away. Not just his main body, but every avatar he possessed was pulled along. All these bodies fused together as one. When Chen Ao regained his senses, he was already standing before a man in a black robe. This man was like a giant, perhaps 100 meters tall, with 2 faces and 8 eyes. Somewhat reminiscent of the two-faced ancestral god, except that his skin was withered and pitch black. I am the Haisha God King of the Haotian sect. The Haisha God King looked down upon Chen Ao, announcing his identity. Chen Ao instantly understood who he faced. The Haotian sect had 3 God Kings in total. The Haotian sect master was the strongest, approaching the middle rank of God Kings, while the other 2 were both at the initial rank, and the Haisha God King was one of them. Chen Ao pays his respects to the Haisha God King. The Haisha God King gave a slight nod. Chen Ao, I am already aware of your affairs. I have no desire to comment on your concealed strength, but such wanton slaughter of formidable experts should cease from now on. I can save you once, but I cannot save you a second time. Chen Ao offered an awkward smile. He had no idea that all of this had been orchestrated by the Haisha God King. He merely felt that his guess had been right. His large-scale exchange of resources had drawn the sect's attention. Thank you, God King, for the rescue. The Haisha God King nodded, preparing to depart. He had no intention of taking a disciple on this first meeting. That would have been far too obvious. The instant the Haisha God King revealed himself, the experts of the Haoyan sect had already sensed his presence. Therefore they rushed to the scene at the earliest possible moment. They thus witnessed the sight of Chen Ao expressing his gratitude to the Haisha God King. Watching this scene, though none of them knew Chen Ao, they all looked upon him with unmatched envy. Even the faintest connection to a God King would bring one immeasurable convenience in the Haoyan sect in the days ahead. A God King. How lofty and exalted was such a being. With this connection, even the chaos sovereigns of the sect would accord him due courtesy. Aimo watched Chen Ao, and it finally struck him this so-called outsider was actually a member of their own Haoyan sect. His gaze was complicated. How envious he was. The Haisha God King looked at the disciples gathering around, unwilling to be gawked at like a caged monkey, and so resolved to leave this place. His purpose had been achieved, his staying any longer served no good. Before the Haisha God King could turn around, Chen Ao bowed low and kowtowed. "Thank you, God King, for saving me. Chen Ao has no way to repay you and only wishes to become a disciple under the God King, serving my gracious master forever." The Haisha God King was stunned. The Haoyan sect disciples were stunned. Aimo's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. How could this man be so utterly shameless as to call the God King master already? The Haisha God King definitely won't think highly of him. Definitely won't. Aimo raged inwardly. A man so shameless. How could the Haisha God King possibly favor such a person? The Haisha God King was utterly bewildered by Chen Ao. He truly hadn't planned to take a disciple this time, merely to make himself familiar. How had it become this? Accept him or not? If he accepted, wouldn't it make him a God King look far too cheap? Yet he had already been thinking of taking on a disciple just moments ago. If he refused, would that little fellow's spirit be crushed? The Haisha God King fell silent. Chen Ao for his part dared not lift his head. He had long wanted to take a God King as his teacher, but the sect never had anything like an assessment mission for becoming a God King's disciple, nor had he ever had any chance to approach one. He had lamented this for several epochs. Now that he had finally encountered a God King, he could not care about any of that. He would simply kowtow first and explain later. If he failed, he would at most be called a toad lusting after swan meat. He was shameless anyway and cared nothing about such labels. But what if, just what if, he succeeded? Take a shot at every opportunity. There was nothing to lose. In the distance, a crowd of Haoyan sect disciples held their breath waiting for the Haisha God King's answer. Chen Ao, however, was perfectly calm. He was simply giving it a try. The odds of success were slim, and he wouldn't mind a failure. The next time he met the Haoyan sect master and the others, he would seek to apprentice himself as well. Haisha was merely the first. If this attempt failed, he would certainly not be the last. The Haisha God King was silent for a moment, then smiled. "You've only just joined the Haoyan sect. Do you know anything about me?" "This disciple does." Chen Ao answered without hesitation. To secure a master, he had meticulously inquired about the affairs of the three God Kings long ago. Master is most protective of his own. No, I mean most caring toward his disciples. The Haisha God King laughed heartily. In the past he had taken 2 disciples. One from his own kind and the other in the early days of the Haoyan sect's founding. Yet both of these disciples had fallen far too soon. Back then his second disciple had been slain by an Eternal of the Beast Force faction known as the Iron Kingdom. The God King had stormed the Iron Kingdom in fury, battling its sovereign for nearly a century, and leaving a full 10th of the kingdom in ruins. At the sound of the Haisha God King's laughter, many Haoyan sect disciples guessed that things were taking an unfavorable turn, and Aimo's heart sank straight to the bottom. How could a man so shameless win the God King's favor? Was talent truly so important? Wasn't moral character what mattered most? Seeing the Haisha God King smile, Chen Ao let out a relieved breath. It seemed his position was secure. As for whether the Haisha God King might be harboring some conspiracy, Chen Ao could only say what was there about him worth plotting over. Even if there was a scheme, it would only matter after he himself reached the rank of God King, and he could weigh it then. With such a chasm between their levels, there was no need to fuss about conspiracies. Before absolute power, every scheme amounts to nothing. I have indeed taken some notice of you, but since you have already comprehended the origin and attained the void, you can no longer walk my lineage. The Haisha God King suddenly said. Hearing this, the people of the Haoyan sect rejoiced at once, while Chen Ao remained silent. Still, your talent is indeed quite good. Since your heart is set on entering my tutelage, I will give you a trial. If you can pass it, I will be willing to accept you as my disciple. Like a thrilling roller coaster ride, the hearts of all present rose and fell with the Haisha God King's words. Chen Ao kowtowed again and again. "Thank you, master. Thank you, master." The Haisha God King gave Chen Ao a long look, seemingly coming to understand his shamelessness. "Don't rush to call me master. We are not master and disciple yet. Wait until you have passed the trial. Whatever trial you assign, master, this disciple is certain to complete it." The Haisha God King couldn't help rolling his eyes, then waved his hand. Chen Ao saw darkness before his eyes. The next moment he found himself inside a spacious palace. "This is only my avatar, or my true body will emerge soon." With those words, the Haisha God King before him disappeared. And in the next instant Chen Ao sensed an even more powerful presence descending. A Haisha God King towering several hundred meters in height appeared. He looked exactly the same as before, only far greater in size. Chen Ao knew that the true bodies of God Kings were unfathomably enormous. To compress oneself down to a few hundred meters was already quite an extraordinary accomplishment. The corpse of the Jin God King from that time had been larger than a small universe. One could see that without conscious control one would revert to one's natural dimensions. And based on what Chen Ao had learned, the Haisha God King's divine body was even larger than the Jin God King's. Moreover, the Haisha God King was highly skilled in battle, far exceeding the Jin God King in combat power. "Chen Ao." The Haisha God King's voice was sonorous and mighty, like a thunderclap bursting at one's ear. "This disciple is present." Hearing Chen Ao's self-address, the Haisha God King pretended not to have heard and continued on his own. "As a God King who has endured this long, I generally do not accept disciples. However, your talent is genuinely remarkable, and your sincere wish to be admitted under my tutelage has stirred a craving in me to cherish an able pupil. Thus I am willing to take you as a nominal disciple. In addition, I will give you a trial. As long as you can meet my expectations, I will take you as my true disciple." Hearing that the Haisha God King was willing to take him on as a nominal disciple right away, Chen Ao was already quite content, for his actual aim was to obtain protection. For instance, he could place the undying blood with the Haisha God King. That way, even if he died, he could resurrect freely, couldn't he? The odds of someone corpse camping him went directly from virtually 0 to 0. As for undying blood, the cost required to restore peak combat strength was truly negligible. Whether it was the divine power needed or treasures like the Qijin Sea or the prime embryo, nothing of the sort was particularly precious to him. In fact, unlike ordinary experts, who simply asked that a weapon be adequate to unleash their strength, the continuously growing prime embryo appeared exceptional. His own requirement for weapons was that the stronger the better, or ideally, he would be handed a God King's weapon at once. Thus he had practically never made use of a prime embryo. Your gene level has already reached 90,000 times, and your comprehension is exceedingly high. At the void stage you can already create mid-tier eternal secret arts. Just one step away from high tier. In these two aspects there is nothing more to criticize. Chen Ao listened in silence, in no hurry to reply. "However, your willpower is only of ordinary caliber. It cannot be called weak, but compared with AIMO and the others it does not." "What advantage does it have?" Chen Ao nodded. His will was at the eternal pinnacle level, still slightly inferior to Luofeng during his true god peak. "Although this has something to do with the short time since your birth as my disciple, I do not want you to have such an ordinary weakness," Divine King Haisha said. "Therefore my requirement for you is this: enter the origin land of my inner world. As long as you can break through to the Chaos Sovereign level under the pressure of my origin, I will accept you as my direct disciple. As for the time limit, I will give you 10 epochs. Of course, the time flow in my inner origin world is 10,000 times that of the outside, so the actual time is 100,000 epochs. Can you accomplish this requirement?" Chen Ao did not know what to say. He had thought he would need to go compete with some genius from hell, but unexpectedly Divine King Haisha wanted his will to make a breakthrough. "Your disciple can do it." Chen Ao naturally would not refuse. Since things had reached this point, he had to accomplish it no matter what. Divine King Haisha revealed a faint smile. "I know you gained no small harvest this time. Go deal with your spoils, restore your condition to its peak, and then come find me. I will draw you into my inner world." "Yes, then your disciple will take his leave." As Chen Ao was leaving, Divine King Haisha gave him a token. "This is the formation token near my palace. With this token you can come find me." Chen Ao took his leave respectfully. Even after leaving the Haisha Divine Palace, Chen Ao felt that his luck seemed a bit too good. A sect is in essence an exchange of interests. Divine King Haisha had no relation to him yet was willing to take him as a disciple. No matter how he looked at it, this was a gain. "It seems the Divine King sees in me an aptitude for Hunyuan. Otherwise a living Divine King would not casually take disciples. The cost of taking a disciple was too great, everyone lacked resources. Chaos City Lord took disciples partly to nurture the younger generations of humanity, and partly because the resources involved were ones he himself did not need. Nor had anyone ever seen Chaos City Lord give his disciples several top-grade or peak supreme treasures. And now the treasures a Divine King used to nurture disciples were mainly Earth Source crystals and Chaos crystals. Even a Divine King was short of them, and the demand was extremely great. Who would think their divine body was too large? Who would dislike their inner world being too powerful? Such people did not exist. Therefore, when a Divine King nurtured a disciple, he truly scrimped resources from between his teeth, weakening himself to support his disciple. Chen Ao's current condition was indeed not very good. The loss of divine body could be set aside, but his true god heart had been pierced several times before. Although the true god heart was not damaged, he did not know whether his soul had suffered any harm. Therefore, since this was a test of will, his soul had to be in a perfect state. Otherwise he might fall short at the last moment. The resources obtained also need to be converted into Earth Source crystals. This time Chen Ao had killed more than 30,000 approaching 40,000 Beast Force lifeforms. Adding the more than a dozen top-ranked Beast Force Void experts, the total resources he harvested reached an astonishing 1.6 trillion. These resources can make my divine body grow by about 1.5 light years. For an ordinary expert, these resources could only improve it by 0.15 light years or 0.225 light years, but because his utilization rate was so high, the increase was much greater. While inspecting himself, Chen Ao began to absorb Earth Source crystals in large quantities. Since absorbing these Earth Source crystals would take 1 or 2 months, he was not the least bit anxious. My thinking was right. My true god heart, like my miniature universe, is extremely stable. Even when the opponent's strength was far greater than mine, he still could not break through my true god heart. Of course, this stability definitely had an upper limit. If a Chaos Sovereign came, his true god heart probably would not withstand it. But this also showed that even when facing an eternal pinnacle, he had a chance to escape and would not be instantly killed. After all, even a miniature universe at the void level would be broken open when encountering an eternal pinnacle existence, let alone a fragile true god heart. My soul is unharmed. Then, as long as I wait for my divine body to recover, I will go find the Divine King. Naturally, becoming a disciple of the Divine King was best done as soon as possible. Chen Ao was continuously absorbing Earth Source crystals. On the other side, the Haotian sect was collectively shaken. Divine King Haisha was actually going to take a disciple. Although the specific news had not yet come out, many people had seen that he had spoken of testing Chen Ao. Then the question arose, who was the disciple Divine King Haisha wanted to take? Could that person not be from the Haotian sect? Why could the Haotian sect find no information about this person? Chen Ao had changed his aura, so others simply could not recognize him. At this moment, Zanku looked at Aimo with a grave expression. Aimo, tell me honestly, do you know that man? Equally unaware of what the other was called, he instinctively used that man to refer to Chen Ao. I know him and I don't know him. Aimo found it both amusing and helpless. I fought him and I lost. But because the gap in strength was too great, I have no idea who the other party is. Now I believe you. He really has eternal high-level combat power. Otherwise Divine King Haisha would not have been moved by him. The Haotian sect had been established for so many reincarnation cycles. It had even raised quite a few Chaos Sovereigns, yet those 3 lofty Divine Kings had taken disciples only a few times. In fact, the 3 Divine Kings had only taken 1 disciple in the early days of the Haotian sect. In the countless reincarnation cycles, since they had never taken another disciple. The disciple taking back then was mostly to build up the Haotian sect's reputation. If not for that purpose, they probably would not have taken a disciple. And now, unexpectedly, someone had caught the Divine King's eye. Why is it not me? If I could obtain the Divine King's nurturing, even becoming a Chaos Sovereign would be easy. I want that too, but the Divine King does not think much of us. But who exactly is that person? The vast majority of people in the Haotian sect were extremely curious. Even those Chaos Sovereigns were astonished. An investigation found no such person. This was truly strange. In the end, they could only conclude that that man was not from the Haotian sect. Chen Ao did not care about these evaluations. He had long since gotten used to being invisible. He focused on absorbing Earth Source crystals and then would go to Divine King Haisha to complete the trial. Brother, are you there? Sayak suddenly came looking for Chen Ao at this moment. Brother, do you have any more good inheritances? I have already fully comprehended the previous inheritance I received, and I feel my combat ability has improved considerably. Isn't that very good? Chen Ao said flatly. Now Sayak had no use value to him at all. In fact, he even wanted to find an opportunity to kill Sayak. Yes, so I wanted to ask you, brother, whether you still have any inheritances. Now I finally know how wonderful it is to have an inheritance to guide me. World beasts were not actually skilled in battle, but if there was a chance to learn how to fight, then naturally it would be better. Relying solely on the world beast warriors one bred was ultimately not as safe as being powerful oneself. There are none left. The rest are core inheritances. If I leaked them to you, my own soul would be annihilated. Alas, that is truly a pity. Since I have no inheritances, I should go out and hunt. The lenient time granted by the sect is almost over. The sect's requirement was to kill 1 void true god per epoch. You could kill 10 at once and rest for 10 epochs. Naturally, disciples who had just joined the sect were also given an adaptation period. This time was used to accept the free inheritances given by the sect. Brother, I intend to go to the battlefield where the Monli tribe and the Stone Kingdom are, and hunt some Beast Force Void experts there. It will increase my strength, allow me to obtain spoils, and complete the sect mission. For others, the corpses of Beast Force Void experts were useless, but for Sayak they were truly used to the fullest. There was not the slightest waste. Then go ahead, but these two battlefields seem a bit unusual. What do you mean? It means an outsider killed too many people from the Monli tribe and the Stone Kingdom, causing the battlefield to be in chaos. The Beast Force Void experts have all fled far away. Sayak. Did he just hear shocking bad news? He had originally planned to cause trouble for these two factions, yet now someone else had beaten him to it. Brother, why do I feel that person's style is so much like yours? And the timing matches perfectly. For so many reincarnation cycles in the past, nothing like this had ever happened. Only after you came for a few epochs did something happen. Chen Ao and Sayak's projections looked at each other, and then he slowly said, although you are dull-witted, your intuition is quite accurate. Sayak. It really was you. Tell me, how many did you kill? Shouldn't there be a share for all present? Scram. All right. But after a while Sayak came to him again. Brother, you are really unfair. There were only 2 Beast Force factions around the Haotian sect, and now you have killed them all off, leaving nothing for me. Say whatever you want. Anyway, I exchanged them all for Earth Source crystals to expand my divine body, Chen Ao said nonchalantly. Sensing his divine body, which was fully 23 light-years in size, Chen Ao was exceedingly satisfied. He also understood why the World Beast King grew so fast. With such a utilization rate of Earth Source crystals, it would be strange if it grew slowly. After all, the consumption for a World Beast King to become a Divine King was 1/10 of that for others. With the same resources used to nurture one Divine King, a World Beast King could nurture 10. 10 might be a bit exaggerated, but the main body plus 3 or 4 World Beast Warriors at the Divine King level could definitely be done. A World Beast King only needed to send World Beast Warriors who had reached the Divine King realm to fight. The main body could hide itself very safely. Do not be fooled by how hard it was for Sayak to use the domain channel now. Each use consumed 1/10 of his divine body. But once the World Beast King's divine body grew to the Divine King level, a divine body of tens of thousands of light-years would allow it to use the domain channel with great abandon. With the domain channel in existence, who could catch him? It seems I still cannot keep Sayak alive. I will find a chance to kill him. As soon as I come out from Divine King Haisha's place, I will act. Without continuing to pay attention to Sayak, who was asking for resources, Chen Ao, after making all necessary preparations, went to the Haisha Divine Palace. Master, your disciple is coming in. Come in. Divine King Haisha opened his eyes at this time. Are you ready? Your disciple is ready. After receiving the affirmative answer, time and space around Divine King Haisha suddenly shifted, and Chen Ao seemed to have entered the Gene world once again. But the Gene world of that time had been like a dead land, whereas the current Haisha world was radiant and hazy, with all kinds of strange phenomena surrounding the small world. Come with me. An incarnation of Divine King Haisha appeared beside Chen Ao. Without his guidance, Chen Ao would never have been able to enter this place. This was not the dead Gene world. Following the lead of the Haisha God King, he stepped into this resplendent 7-hued world. Vaguely, Chen Ao sensed the birth and passing of countless lives. It seemed that innumerable beings thrived all around him, yet when he tried to reach out he could see nothing. This is the source land of my inner world, connected to the origins of countless lives. That is why you see such a spectacle. God King Haisha smiled at Chen Ao's bewildered expression. If one day you become a God King and transform the chaos heart within your body into a miniature universe, you will feel the same. He continued forward, and Chen Ao felt the surrounding rainbow glow gradually fade, replaced by endless darkness. The primordial source is ever in opposition. Outside all is splendor and vitality. Here all is shadow and silence. In truth, this darkness is the very essence of life. Gazing at this place, Chen Ao fell into thought. He had already comprehended the origin of destruction. If he could also comprehend the origin of life and combine the two, he would attain the status of Chaos Sovereign. You are not far from comprehending life. Perhaps you can seize this opportunity to advance further. Chen Ao nodded, suddenly understanding why Wishan Ku had said he had no interest in the original universe. For a God King's inner world was a true universe in itself. To seize the original universe and comprehend the origin of life through it is to a God King merely a foundation. To meditate on the origin here for a long time is by no means inferior to seizing the original universe, is it? We have arrived. Stay here. God King Haisha said. Here you will be able to feel the will of countless lives. Individually those strands of will may be nothing to you, but the river formed by the will of innumerable lives is enough to shatter even a Chaos Sovereign's will. Here you can absolutely let your will grow to the level of a Chaos Sovereign. So Haisha God King was not testing Chen Ao with his own will, nor was he subjecting him to oppression like the black pattern stone pillar on the cosmic arc. That black pattern stone pillar was highly effective against true gods, void true gods, and even eternal true gods, but it was utterly useless against a Chaos Sovereign. Even a God King could not easily crush the will of a Chaos Sovereign. What he could do was to let the will of countless lives within his miniature universe form a roaring torrent wave after wave to oppress Chen Ao. However, this torrent of will fluctuates in intensity. It may be hard for you to bear, and there is some danger. It is not too late for you to back out now. No. If I cannot even pass this trial, then I can hardly speak of becoming a powerhouse. Ha ha ha, good. It is excellent that you have such a mindset. Which of us God Kings did not climb upward over countless bones? Even those who became God Kings through craftiness are only false God Kings possessing the realm but lacking true strength. Chen Ao remained silent and simply sat down quietly. 100,000 epochs. When the time is up or when your will breaks through, I will come to take you out. I hope you will not disappoint me. I will certainly not disappoint you, master. Faint laughter from Haisha God King echoed through the void. Then the divine body that had guided Chen Ao dispersed directly. That made sense. This was the source land of Haisha God King's inner world, so where divine power dispersed it naturally meant reconstitution. Even if it truly dispersed, a divine body spanning several light years was nothing to a God King. The inner world, by devouring origin essences at every moment, could transform them into boundless divine power. Every God King stored a vast amount of divine power, for a God King's lifespan was extremely long. Nevertheless, the divine body remained very important since the miniature universe had a limit to the divine power it could store. When the stored divine power was roughly similar among all, a divine body 1 part larger meant 1 part more divine power. All of it was strength. Even a tiny increment was significant. No one would ever think that being slightly stronger did not count as becoming stronger. Chen Ao sat quietly contemplating everything around him. This was both a trial of his will and an aid for him to comprehend the law of life. Soon the originally stagnant darkness suddenly became clamorous. Just like when he first entered the miniature universe, he sensed an endless breath of life. Then those life breaths suddenly vanished again, reverting to boundless barren darkness. This cycle repeated endlessly. Every cycle is the birth and death reincarnation of countless lives in Haisha's world, and I am situated precisely between life and death. Haisha God King was right. The will here fluctuated in strength, but even at its weakest it reached the level of a chaos sovereign. For it was the will of endless lives. And when it surged strong, Chen Ao felt his own will on the verge of collapse. It surges and weakens without any pattern. Truly unfathomable. Yet the trial it poses to the will is genuinely intense. I dare not relax in the slightest. While the will continuously washed over him, Chen Ao took this opportunity to perceive the origin of life. After all, every second he could clearly sense the birth and death of billions of beings, as if he had entered the bodies of billions in a single second. Zuoshan Ku said that comprehending the great destruction of the original universe is probably somewhat similar to this, isn't it? However, comprehending the great annihilation is inferior to seizing the original universe. That should be because birth and death in the great annihilation are not balanced enough. But if one seizes the original universe, then while it operates, countless lives are dying and being born at every moment. Such ceaseless reincarnation. As his will merged with billions of living beings, Chen Ao's soul seemed to split into hundreds of millions of pieces. Moreover, it changed every second. One moment it was Zhang San's death. The next Li Si's birth. Then Wang Er's demise. Time after time, cycle after cycle. Before he knew it, Chen Ao had actually fallen asleep here, as if none of this had anything to do with him. Watching Chen Ao sleep, a pair of eyes suddenly appeared in the void. It was Haisha God King, observing Chen Ao through the source of his inner world. Even Haisha God King was reluctant to come here. Although he was the creator of billions of lives, in essence it was his miniature universe that created life, not he himself. If one day he could mold a life with his own hands, then he would be a Hunyuan lord, not merely a Hunyuan life form. This direct creation of life represented the supreme law. Something God Kings pursued their entire lives. I wonder how much he can comprehend. Haisha God King was full of anticipation. A void true God was merely a starting point. If one could truly comprehend everything in this land of origins, it was possible to directly attain Chaos Sovereign. If he can become a sovereign within 100,000 epochs, even if he merely comprehends life and destruction simultaneously, then his probability of becoming a God King in the future will be extremely great. Finding that Chen Ao was unharmed, Haisha God King no longer paid attention. As a God King whose lifespan spanned hundreds of thousands of reincarnation years, time truly had lost its meaning. Outside the Haoyan sect, Sayak left the Haoshur battlefield cursing indignantly, because he had just entered the Haoshur battlefield and had finally located a few Beast Force Void warriors. He charged over and slew them, but suddenly more than a dozen Void experts ranked among the top 200 of the Shur Kingdom appeared. Fortunately, Dong Mei had already been killed by Chen Ao. Otherwise, Dong Mei's expression upon seeing Sayak would have been most interesting. Sayak of the Haoyan sect, were we not warned before that you should not slaughter at will? Do you truly think that just because our Shur Kingdom has suffered losses on this battlefield, you can do whatever you please? Sayak, when did any of you ever tell me that? Are you sure you have the right person? He looked baffled. These people acted as if they were familiar with him. Have you all seen me before? I have been cultivating in seclusion at the Haotian sect all along and never once left. Humph, how could we mistake you? A newcomer to the Haotian sect over several thousand years ago, you slew more than 3,000 void experts of my Sure Kingdom. The centaur Dong Mei specially warned you. What did you think that with Dong Mei fallen our Sure Kingdom would forget you? Sayak. All he wanted now was to curse someone's entire family. Drawing a deep breath, Sayak knew that he had no choice but to bear the blame. There was simply no chance to explain. Fine. Since you have caught me, I'll leave. You come and go as you please. Do you really think our Sure Kingdom is a vassal of your Haotian sect? With that, those powerhouses charged directly at Sayak and engaged him in a great battle. Sayak had not been idle during these epics. He had genuinely honed many combat skills. Thus, facing these Beast Force Void experts who had reached initial eternal level combat power, he showed no fear. In the end, relying on his enormous divine body, he forcibly slew 2 Beast Force Void experts and swaggered off. With this battle, Sayak truly made a name for himself. Previously, people thought that Sayak's divine body was small, and that he ranked only in the top 200. Now it seemed that his divine body was actually not small at all. His colossal divine body plus combat power close to mid-eternal level. Even ranking in the top 20 was not impossible. The top 10 usually required mid-eternal combat power. Someone at Sayak's level could at most reach the top 20. After all, this was not a true strength ranking but merely a measure of power. After leaving the battlefield, Sayak's expression brightened considerably at the spoils of war, but he still went cursing to find Chen Ao demanding an explanation. That shameless bastard had actually impersonated him. However, Chen Ao had already entered Haisha God King's inner world, by then, so of course he could not receive Sayak's messages. Damn you, Chen Ao. You actually disappeared on me. You despicable little imposter. Sayak kept cursing Chen Ao. Although he had killed 2 top 200 Beast Force Void experts through all-out effort, continuing like this was not a solution. That fellow stirred up trouble in both the Haotian battlefield and the battlefield on the Monli tribe side. If nothing unexpected happens, I am also a victim. Originally he had assumed that even if the battlefield had been swept clean by Chen Ao, there would still be a little gravy left. Killing a few thousand would have been about right. Unexpectedly, he had only killed a few before being caught. Since those 2 places are off-limits, where should I go? Around Haotian sect there were only connections with these 2 Beast Force powers. Farther away he would have to go to the Tai Kingdom or the territory of the World Beast King. The World Beast King's territory was absolutely impossible. Who knew whether that entity could sense his presence and directly swallow him or enslave him? In that case, I have to choose to go to other battlefields. Although Chen Ao had ruined 2 battlefields, both the Monli tribe and the Sure Kingdom had connections with other divine power factions, and warfields existed there as well. Then I'll go to the battlefield between the Han Kingdom and the Monli tribe. That's the closest. Even though Chen Ao had screwed him over, there was nothing he could do about it, because Chen Ao was stronger than him. He is indeed my lifelong rival, but in the end the final victor will surely be the great World Beast King Sayak. Chen Ao was crushed beneath the torrent of will emanating from a divine king's world, his soul often quaking to its very core. Were it not for the extraordinary sturdiness of his true god heart, he would have been utterly annihilated time and again. This annihilation did not mean death nor the dissolution of his soul. Rather, his soul was being inundated with the memories of countless other lives. In consequence, he would forget who he was and descend into outright madness. After all, among those departed lives many possessed wills no less formidable than his own, and quite a number of them had even reached the Chaos Sovereign level. And those were merely the mightiest among them. Set against the torrent of billions upon billions of wills, they amounted to nothing at all. His life aura is growing. The eyes of Black Sha, Divine King, appeared once more, gazing upon Chen Ao, who lay motionless in the origin void. His will has long since surpassed the Chaos Sovereign level, and it is still climbing. Is he comprehending the origin of life? Black Sha, Divine King's cultivation realm was lofty beyond measure, and he could perceive every detail of Chen Ao with absolute clarity. Especially since Chen Ao concealed nothing. Still, there was little worth staring at in a grown man like Chen Ao. Apart from the origin of destruction laid bare before him, and the origin of life on the verge of comprehension, the only other discovery was Chen Ao's divine body spanning 23 light-years. Things such as the system or the 100,000-fold gene factor remained entirely invisible to him. 10 epochs had long since slipped away, and Black Sha, Divine King, showed no intention of rousing Chen Ao. For his willpower happened to be perfectly suited to this place, allowing him to attune to the local origin, and thereby comprehend the origin of life in due course. Had Chen Ao's will been either too potent or too feeble upon entering, such flawless enlightenment would have been impossible. His power of comprehension is truly that of a prodigy. Certain that Chen Ao was in no danger, Black Sha, Divine King, set his worries aside. After all, Chen Ao's will had already attained the Chaos Sovereign level. He could wake himself at any moment he pleased. Time upon the origin continent remained utterly insignificant. Whether 100,000 years or 100 million ages to the mighty, it was no different from the blink of an eye. And yet some geniuses advanced at a terrifying pace. So this is the foremost prodigy of our Haotian sect in this reincarnation era. Many onlookers gaped at Sa Yak with expressions of awe. Indeed a supreme genius. Born less than 100,000 epochs ago, he has already broken through to eternal true God with combat power reaching eternal high. Eternal high. Does that not mean he can venture forth and govern a domain all by himself? Do you imagine everyone is like us where becoming eternal and holding a governorship is the pinnacle of ambition? With such meteoric progress, Sa Yak is surely striving to become a chaos sovereign. Perhaps even to seize the throne of a divine king. Amid the endless murmur of voices, Sa Yak stepped onto Haotian Peak with an impassive countenance. Nearly 80,000 epochs had elapsed since he had departed the Haotian sect to hunt in the outer world. As a boundary beast king unbound by bottlenecks, Sa Yak's breakthroughs came swiftly. Once his strength reached eternal mid, he shattered straight through to become an eternal true god. By now he wielded combat power at the eternal high level. This was solely because he lacked an eternal grade divine power burning secret art. Had he possessed one, his strength might well have soared to the eternal peak echelon. Chen Ao. Where in the world have you gone? 80,000 epochs and I haven't managed to find a single trace of you. Ever since that exchange, Chen Ao had seemingly vanished from the face of the world, not even carrying out his sect assignments. By all rights this should have cost Chen Ao his status as an elder of the sect. Yet for reasons none could fathom, his name remained on the roster of outer sect elders. Sa Yak yearned to find Chen Ao to make him taste the might of his eternal high combat power, to make him understand who the true father was. For now my strength only barely surpasses yours. But as the ages roll on, my power shall only mount higher. The sole regret was that having become an eternal true god, he could no longer hunt as he pleased, only launching the occasional surprise strike. The resources gleaned this way were far too meager to lift him to Chaos Sovereign. Had I known, I should have stockpiled far more resources back at the void level. Unlike Chen Ao, Sa Yak's temperament was flamboyant. He broke through the instant he could, never once considering that the void level was the prime window for amassing resources. Now that he had become eternal, his strength had grown, yet the difficulty of hunting had swelled 1,000-fold. The rate at which he acquired resources had slowed by thousands of times compared to his void level days, and the resources required to ascend from eternal to Chaos Sovereign were hundreds or thousands of times greater than the journey from void to eternal. At this pace, Sa Yak would likely need 1 or 2 entire reincarnation eras to become a Chaos Sovereign. A miscalculation truly. But at least I now understand why those boundary beast kings go and make themselves the scourge of heaven and humanity. From void to eternal, were he to count by devouring void-level experts together with their mini-universes, roughly 1,000 would suffice. Were he to refrain from devouring mini-universes and consume only the bodies of the experts themselves, the number would multiply tens or even 100-fold. And to reach Chaos Sovereign, the number of eternal true gods he would need to devour would climb into the tens of thousands. And that was counting their mini-universes as well. If he kept devouring at such a rate, the great powers would be out of their minds not to fly into a fury. The Haotian sect boasted 7 million void-level cultivators, yet a mere 10,000 plus eternal true gods. These eternal true gods, whose strength ranged high and low, were also needed to garrison every quarter and gather local resources for the sect. The loss of even a single one would grieve the Haotian sect for a long age, let alone a mass slaughter. Sa Yak remained fixated on Chen Ao, while Chen Ao for his part was still lying prone in the origin land of Black Sha Divine King. How goes it? Do you intend to break through to Chaos Sovereign? The avatar of Black Sha Divine King materialized, looking down at Chen Ao below. Only upon hearing those words did Chen Ao slowly open his eyes. I feel something is still lacking. Though I have comprehended both the origin of destruction and the origin of life, using them to transform my true god heart into a chaos heart, it is not quite enough. That is just as well. At this moment Chen Ao remained a void true god, yet to break through to eternal. His intentions went without saying. Black Sha Divine King watched Chen Ao's eyes blink without pause and suddenly roared with laughter. Since you have met the requirements your master set, you are naturally my personal disciple. And as my personal disciple, I shall of course nurture you with the utmost care. Chen Ao was elated and immediately bowed in thanks. This disciple thanks you, master. Black Sha Divine King nodded. Chen Ao's aptitude for enlightenment was even more astonishing than he had imagined. How long had it been? Even with the 10,000-fold acceleration, it was merely 800 million epochs. Less than 1/10,000th of a reincarnation year. And Chen Ao now stood a single step from Chaos Sovereign. Perhaps a flash of insight on the morrow would send him breaking through on the spot. A genius like this, even having wandered across vast swaths of the origin continent, was something he had never heard of in all his days. There is even the faintest chance that this disciple of mine could become a divine king within this very reincarnation year. Chen Ao soon departed the origin land and arrived at the Black Sha Divine Hall. This disciple pays respects to master. Black Sha Divine King regarded Chen Ao before him with satisfaction. Enough. I know you must have been waiting impatiently all this while. With that, Black Sha Divine King raised a hand and a black hole-like object materialized before Chen Ao. Within it are resources worth a quadrillion contribution points, containing both Earth Source Crystals and Chaos Crystals. Hearing Black Sha Divine King's words, Chen Ao at once bowed with profound reverence. A quadrillion was no trifling figure even in the eyes of a divine king. If devoted to strengthening a divine body, these resources would suffice to augment Black Sha Divine King's physique by 150 light-years. Though his divine body had already reached 20,000 light-years, 150 was hardly negligible. For Chen Ao, however, these resources were all the more staggering, the equivalent of slaying over 30 million void high-level experts or above. Even an assembly of 30 to 50 divine kings in strength could not muster such a number. What Black Sha Divine King had given him was enough to spare him dozens of reincarnation eras of arduous struggle. These resources, neither too much nor too little. I confess I have no great hoard left, for resources have ever been poured into the enhancement of strength. Master, this disciple understands. These resources have already surpassed anything I could have imagined. Black Sha Divine King looked at Chen Ao. I know that no matter how many resources you have, they shall never be enough. If you desire more, I can offer you an opportunity. Oh, Chen Ao immediately turned his gaze to Black Sha Divine King. Master, could there be a way? Black Sha Divine King nodded. You should know that will comes from. What I mean to say is resources depend on countless beings gathering them from every corner of the origin continent. Our Haotian sect is merely the transporter of resources. Chen Ao nodded. Everyone knew this, yet they were still willing to bring their resources to the Haotian sect to exchange for inheritances. It was a willing buyer, willing seller arrangement. No issue at all. Thus the territory a sect controls is of paramount importance. And this territory on the one hand depends on strength, on the other, it depends on contention between rivals. The moment Black Sha Divine King voiced it, Chen Ao understood. Such was the decree established by the many divine king powers. Once every 10 epochs each would wager a portion of its own territory against other divine king powers in contest. The last time, roughly 10 reincarnation eras ago, the Haotian sect's stake in the contest had been approximately 1/20th of its lands. And encircling the Haotian sect were no fewer than 5 major powers. Meaning the sect had wagered a full quarter of its territory in contests against the surrounding forces. The results had been passable: 3 victories, and 2 defeats, netting a modest gain in territory. Could it be that this territorial contest is about to commence once more? Indeed, roughly 10,000 epochs from now, the other powers have already begun negotiating with our Haotian sect, said Black Sha Divine King. Chen Ao kept silent. In truth, participation in such a contest was restricted to eternal true gods. A void true god did not yet count as an expert, only eternal cultivation marked true stature. And judging from the previous contest, all 5 eternal participants had wielded strength at the elementary chaos sovereign level. That is to say, an eternal true god needed to master an eternal grade divine power, burning secret art, and devise secret techniques of the elementary chaos sovereign tier. Such strength, even during the void level, marked one as an elite among elites, honored with a place within the top 200. Once they reached eternal, needless to say, they were geniuses among geniuses, capable of standing toe-to-toe with chaos sovereigns. And a chaos sovereign was suited to rove the origin continent at will. Divine kings were after all exceedingly rare and would not act lightly. A chaos sovereign was the most formidable figure commonly seen in the open, on par with the universe masters of the primal universe, the absolute apex of power. What do you think? Do you have the confidence to secure a single slot? 1 slot to begin with. This resource reward amounts to 100 trillion contributions. And if one can defeat an opponent, the reward soars to 1,000 trillion. Even for eternal true gods, this reward was alluring. 1,000 billion could grant a prodigy a divine body spanning 150 light-years, already reaching the level of a chaos sovereign. With a divine body of several hundred light-years combined with early-stage chaos sovereign combat power, one could escape even most chaos sovereigns. Ahem, master, I actually wanted to ask. Has there ever been a precedent of one person dominating all the others and fighting 5 at once? Black Sha Divine King looked at Chen Ao in surprise. His hope for Chen Ao was merely to secure 1 spot. After all, to participate in the name competition, one had to possess at least early-stage chaos sovereign combat power. Right now you're still a void true god. You're that confident, and you want to fight 5 at once. I think I can give it a try, said Chen Ao. Black Sha Divine King studied Chen Ao for a moment, then said, of course you can, but if you're relying on divine body size to win, that will be difficult. The eternal true gods who participate won't have small divine bodies. Even if they don't have 100 light-years, they'll have 70 or 80. These geniuses of eternity had all been nurtured by the Haotian sect for many reincarnation cycles, so external conditions like their divine bodies naturally couldn't be too poor. If nurturing divine bodies weren't so resource-consuming, stacking them straight up to 1,000 light-years wouldn't have been impossible. It's just that the Haotian sect couldn't bear such consumption either. 1,000 light-years would require at least 700 billion Earth source crystals. Even a divine king wouldn't be willing to part with that. I think I can give it a try, Chen Ao said in a deep voice. If he obtained that 5 quadrillion 500 trillion in resources, his divine body would reach 6,000 light-years. Mountain Guest was only a bit over 10,000 light-years, while he would reach 6,000. How astonishing would that be? Alright, in 10,000 epochs if you still intend to participate, come find me. I'll give you a chance. Whether you succeed will ultimately depend on your own strength. Your disciple will do his utmost. After saying this, Chen Ao took his leave. Chen Ao quickly returned to his palace and checked his messages. Only then did he notice that many outer sect elders had sent him messages inquiring about his situation. And among them, the one who contacted him the most was of course his good younger brother Sake. Tisk, not bad. You knew to come find me. Just as well I wanted to find you too. Chen Ao opened the resource pouch Blacksha Divine King had given him. Clattering sounds rang out as countless resources appeared. To Chen Ao's surprise, 90% were Earth source level and 10% were Chaos level. That meant 90 billion Earth source crystals and 10 billion Chaos crystals. Master must have assumed I was going to break through to the eternal level and would need a great deal of Chaos crystals. However, Blacksha Divine King had miscalculated. Chen Ao needed far more Chaos crystals than that. Based on his earlier calculations at the void level, he'd needed roughly 100 million Chaos crystals. Since his minor universe's diameter was expanding tenfold, the Chaos crystals he'd need would be 100 billion. Master has no idea that when I ascend to eternal, my minor universe will directly expand to 100 billion light-years, right? Chen Ao wasn't surprised by this. After all, 100,000-fold gene was truly heaven-defying, completely ignoring the normal law of gradual minor universe expansion. If I were a Chaos Sovereign, I would use all these resources to enhance the origin of my minor universe. After all, the Chaos Heart of a Chaos Sovereign transfers divine power extremely quickly. As long as the minor universe's origin is abundant, the speed at which it absorbs divine power would be enormous. But even after his breakthrough, he was only an eternal true god. Although the true god heart could also absorb divine power from the minor universe during battle to replenish him. In terms of absorption speed, however, it lagged by tens of millions of times. Against powerful opponents, tens of billions or even hundreds of billions of divine power could be lost in a single second, and the true god heart's efficiency in transmitting divine power was far too slow to keep up. Perfect. I'll follow this ratio then. Though it may have been unintentional, it truly suits me. Chen Ao began absorbing the Earth source crystals. A full 90 billion Earth source crystals, 100 times more than he had absorbed before, naturally required a very long time. Time slowly passed. It took a full 100 years before Chen Ao completely absorbed the 90 billion Earth source crystals. His divine body had now reached 928 light-years. Since 1 light-year was just over 9 trillion kilometers. Not truly 10 trillion, 90 billion Earth source crystals could actually increase his divine body by 905 light-years. My divine body has reached its limit, 928 light-years. Next I should break through to eternal. He had long been able to break through, but he'd wanted to plunder more resources first, so he had held off. Now that his divine body had reached its limit, continuing to plunder wouldn't increase it much, so it was better to break through sooner. As Chen Ao's intention radiated outward, his minor universe in the far-off cosmic sea began to expand unceasingly, directly expanding from 10 billion light-years to 100 billion light-years. 10 billion chaos crystals. In no time, these chaos crystals were rapidly devoured by him, and the amount of his origin instantly increased 100-fold. However, this still wasn't his limit. He could devour another 90 billion chaos crystals. It's just that I don't have 90 billion chaos crystals. With his origin increased 100-fold, Chen Ao faintly gained insights into the origin of life and the origin of destruction. It seemed he was getting closer and closer to breaking through that boundary. Even if I can break through, I shouldn't. I have to wait at least until the major faction competition 10,000 epochs from now. The resources had been completely digested. Now it was time to see where his strength stood. Back when he was at the void level, he had already created secret arts at the eternal intermediate limit. And when his consciousness had been scoured by the torrent of will from the universe within Blacksha Divine King's body, not only had his will grown stronger, but his understanding of the laws and origins had also greatly deepened. Directly comprehending the origin of life was the best proof. This likewise meant that the ceiling on his secret arts had been raised. But in all that long time I never tried creating any secret arts. Now though I can give it a try. Chen Ao began creating secret arts. He didn't rack his brains over it. He simply created based on his current realm. Sure enough, I easily created a secret art at the Eternal Peak level. Eternal also had 4 levels, and Eternal Peak was already the limit of the Eternal stage. This suited his realm perfectly. After all, he was only 1 step away from Chaos Sovereign. With such a high realm, it was hardly strange that he could create an Eternal Peak secret art. Next it's time for me to show what my cheats can do. An Eternal Peak secret art was just a foundation. something anyone could achieve once their realm reached that level. Geniuses however broke past that limit. I already have an eternal level divine power burning secret technique. As long as I create a Chaos Sovereign early level secret art, I'll directly qualify to participate in the sect competition. Chen Ao calmed his mind and focused on using his cheats. Time continued to pass. Sek still sent Chen Ao a message every few tens of thousands of years asking about his situation. This had been going on for a very long time. Even though Chen Ao had long since left Blacksha Divine King's inner world, he still ignored him. In 5,000 epochs this one move has reached the early Chaos Sovereign level. Chen Ao casually swung his sword, and a rift appeared in the void before him. If this were the cosmic sea, that sword strike would be enough to tickle the primordial universe. His secret art had reached its limit. To go further was not something achievable in a short time. Next Chen Ao went to find Blacksha Divine King. Blacksha Divine King was rather surprised. It hadn't been that long. Why had Chen Ao come looking for him instead of staying put and creating secret arts to improve his strength? He wasn't at all surprised that Chen Ao had broken through to Eternal. He had already anticipated it when he gave Chen Ao the Chaos Crystals. My disciple, what is it that brings you to me at this hour? Master, your disciple wishes to request 2 treasures from you. Oh, what treasures? Even top-grade Chaos Sovereign treasures could be exchanged from the sect. The price was high, 100 times that of top-grade void treasures, reaching over 100 million contributions. But such an amount meant nothing to Chen Ao. Spending $1 billion or 2 to buy a full set of Chaos Sovereign treasures was merely pocket change. Chen Ao's haul from a single outing was in the trillions. Treasures, after all, had limited demand, so their prices were only so high. I wish to request a Divine King-level sword from Master. If possible, I would also like Master to help me refine a territory-type treasure. His weapon was better the stronger it was, and the chess sword C was equally useful. However, now that his strength had reached the early Chaos Sovereign level, the chess sword C was no longer good enough. If it could be elevated to the Divine King level, that would be ideal. You're an eternal true god. Why do you want a Divine King weapon? Isn't a top-grade Chaos Sovereign weapon enough? Refining treasures was something most Divine Kings knew how to do. With their long lifespans, they needed something to occupy themselves. Refining treasures was certainly possible. Many Divine Kings could refine Divine King-level treasures, and most could refine Chaos Sovereign-level ones. The 3 sovereigns of the Food Kingdom had directly destroyed the Gene Kingdom, which showed that the status of artifact refiners wasn't actually that high. At least not as high as a faction's territory. Otherwise, by normal reasoning, a master artisan like the Gene Divine King should have been pursued by everyone. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Although the treasures I refine aren't as good as yours, the ones I craft can still bring out one's strength. So there's really no need to care about artifact refining Divine Kings. Blacksha Divine King could also refine treasures, though his skill was average. He could only manage Chaos Sovereign level ones. Still, the sect did have 2 Chaos Sovereigns capable of forging Divine King weapons. Your disciple has special reasons, so I beg Master to help. Blacksha Divine King didn't press further. Anyone who had reached this level was bound to have secrets. Our Haoyan sect has no master refiner capable of forging top-grade Divine King treasures. Among the nearby factions, the strongest refiner is the Blood River sect master. He's only 1 step away from forging top-grade Divine King treasures. Next is our sect master, who can forge quite a few excellent high-grade Divine King treasures. A smile broke out on Chen Ao's face. High-grade Divine King treasures were already good enough. Although Divine Kings generally possessed top-grade Divine King treasures, they weren't exactly numerous. After all, among 100 Divine Kings, not even one could refine treasures of that level. Tell me your requirements. I'll go see the sect master and ask him to forge them for you. Chen Ao quickly stated his requirements. For the sword, the higher the grade, the better. For the chess sword C, the more divine swords, the better. A top-grade Eternal one could hold 250 swords, so a Divine King level one should have at least 800, right? Fine. Wait for me here. For 2 treasures, even with a Divine King personally forging them, it would only cost a few tens of billions in contributions. It was quite a stretch, but the key question was whether he could meet the God King. Chen Ao stayed behind at the Haisha Divine Hall to wait. Before he knew it, 3 epochs had slipped by. Only then did Haisha God King return. The moment Haisha God King descended, 2 treasures, radiating a dark ebony glow, drifted toward Chen Ao. These are the treasures refined according to your requirements. Take a look and see if they suit your needs. The sword was a massive greatsword, its blade, exceptionally broad, appearing extraordinarily heavy. To Chen Ao, this was of no consequence. As long as it was a double-edged sword in shape, the system would recognize it. The Qi Jianhai, which boasted upper-grade God King quality, genuinely astonished Chen Ao. This time the number of divine swords directly reached 1,000. Seeing Chen Ao fix his gaze on Qi Jianhai, Haisha God King remarked. The sect master said, he is not particularly skilled at refining such special treasures. If you are in need, you can go to a place about 30 trillion Qi to the north of our sect. There lies the Mu Kingdom, where a master artifact refiner resides. reportedly one of the surviving remnants of the destroyed Jin Kingdom. He can refine treasures of the Supreme God King grade. This time Chen Ao was taken aback. Jin Kingdom? Was it the same Jin Kingdom he knew? Master, the Jin Kingdom you speak of. Is it? Oh, that. You're still too young. Haisha God King did not mind Chen Ao's curiosity. Roughly 80 or so Kulpa years ago, some 300 billion chi from here, there was a kingdom called Jin. Its sovereign was exceptionally skilled in refining treasures. Indeed, it was through artifact refinement that he ascended to become a god king. However, this Jin Kingdom has already been destroyed by another kingdom. This all happened over 80 Kulpa years ago. Which kingdom vanquished Jin? It seems to have been the Sure Kingdom, though another force appears to have intervened, as well intending to carve up the territory of Jin. Chen Ao drew a deep breath. He had searched through no small amount of information in the Haoyan sect but had found nothing about the Jin Kingdom. Never would he have expected that Haisha God King would know of it. That was true. Although the location from which one emerged from the cosmic sea was uncertain, it could not be too utterly far-fetched. 30 trillion chi though. That distance was simply absurd. Back then, when he had traveled by teleportation, a mere 8 million chi had taken him several thousand years. Even after becoming a God King, teleportation speed would not increase. At most one could sustain shorter bursts of speed. For long-distance travel, one still had to rely on teleportation. 8 million chi takes about 3,000 years. How long would 30 trillion chi take? Chen Ao felt rather speechless. 110 epochs. And that was assuming uninterrupted teleportation. In reality, the time required would be roughly 10 times that. That would mean spending the entire journey on the road. Perhaps there would be teleportation arrays along the way which could speed things up a bit. But unfamiliar forces would not allow an outsider expert to casually use their teleportation arrays. Experts at the void and eternity levels were tolerable enough, but once one reached chaos, sovereign, everyone became highly vigilant. After all, if such a powerhouse stirred up trouble, even god kings might have to mobilize. And over such a vast distance, unless one was a chaos sovereign, one simply would not dare to go. Master, does the Sure Kingdom still exist? Of course it does. After devouring Jin, the Sure Kingdom only became even stronger. It now has as many as 4 god kings, and its strength is in no way inferior to that of our Haoyan sect. The Haoyan sect master's strength was rather formidable, so for him to count as 2 was hardly unusual. What's this? You seem rather interested in the Jin and Sure Kingdoms. Chen Ao smiled wryly and told Haisha God King about the God King of Jin. There was no point in concealing such a matter. Haisha God King heard Chen Ao's words, but revealed no unusual expression. I never expected that you came from the cosmic sea. To achieve void cultivation from a place like that. It is no wonder your talent is so remarkable. As for everything concerning the God King of Jin, Haisha God King remained perfectly composed. Such grievances and grudges were an everyday occurrence on the origin continent. After all, resources were only so abundant. Every time a new God King appeared, a war of contention would break out. The new God King had to challenge the old powers. Otherwise, where else would a God King's divine body stretching tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of light years come from? Even here at Haoyan sect, if another God King were to arise, war with other forces over territory would be inevitable. After all, the Haoyan sect's territory was only enough to sustain 3 God Kings. With one more, the only answer would be war. So you're saying if you were to become a God King, you would necessarily go seek vengeance against those 3 from the Sure Kingdom? Chen Ao nodded. Indeed, such is my vow. If this disciple can attain the rank of God King, I am willing to avenge the God King of Jin. Haisha God King said nothing more. Chen Ao was his disciple, not his possession. Chen Ao had his own thoughts. Moreover, that was a matter for after Chen Ao became a God King. For now it was still far off. At this time Chen Ao also brought up the matter of Sayak. A realm beast like that was impossible for him to enslave. In truth, once a realm beast matured into a king, no one could enslave it. Not even a God King could. Your experiences really are rich and colorful, I must say. It astonishes me to think that you actually arrived at the origin continent alongside a realm beast. Just average. Haisha God King nodded. However, as for a realm beast king, it's better to kill it sooner rather than later. One realm beast king in our vicinity is already cause for vigilance. With another one, no one would be able to withstand the threat. In the campaign to exterminate a realm beast king back then, more than a few god kings fell in battle. Haisha God King made a casual backhand gesture, and boundless world power surged forth, directly enshrouding the entire Haoyan Peak. As vast as Haoyan Peak was, it was nothing compared to a god king's inner world. Sayak had originally been immersed in comprehending the inheritance he had exchanged for, but caught off guard, a streak of power suddenly descended and directly dragged him to this place. Sayak was stricken with unimaginable terror, for his identity could not withstand the light of day. The very next moment, however, his eyes nearly split apart with fury, because beside him Chen Ao was watching him with a faint, derisive smile. Chen Ao, you? What have you done? Sayak cried out in panic. Chen Ao did not speak. He merely shrugged indifferently. In truth, even if Haisha God King did not kill Sayak, he had been planning to find an opportunity to make his move anyway. In fact, he had already conceived the entire plan. He simply had not expected that when he sought treasures from Haisha God King this time, he would unexpectedly learn news of the Jin Kingdom, and so had mentioned Sayak as well. Otherwise, he would have brought Sayak to Aming City, joined forces with him to eradicate the city's power, and then disposed of Sayak along the way. Now it actually saved him the trouble. Chen Ao claims that you are a realm beast king. Sayak, open your inner world and let me inspect it. If you are not a realm beast king, I will have Chen Ao offer you a formal apology and atonement. Sayak was after all a rising star of the Haoyan sect. For the sake of the sect's stability, he could not be killed out of hand. However, if Sayak exposed his inner world, then killing him would be entirely justified. Upon hearing Haisha God King's words, Sayak instantly shrieked, Chen Ao, what grudge or grievance do I bear against you that you would harm me so? I have always addressed you as elder brother and respected you deeply, yet you would do something like this to me. Chen Ao remained smiling and silent. In reality, the two of them each harbored their own sinister designs. Neither of them was a good sort. Of course, Chen Ao never considered himself a good person, so he bore no burden of conscience. He had committed no small number of heinous deeds. Finishing off Sayak was nothing at all. Sayak, release your inner world and allow me to examine it. A realm beast king could alter its life aura, and thus was naturally skilled at concealment. But as god kings they could hardly inspect the inner world of every single disciple. In reality, realm beast kings were so rare that one would only appear every tens of thousands of kalpa years or even hundreds of thousands of kalpa years. Most god kings had lived from birth to death without ever seeing a true realm beast king. Even Haisha God King had only seen two. Mercy! I beg the God King to spare my life. Haisha God King shook his head. Regrettable. Realm beast kings cannot be enslaved, otherwise I would not mind having a realm beast king as a servant. But if I do not enslave you, the future of a realm beast king is too terrifying. Even I would not dare to let you live. In the cosmic sea, realm beasts whose power was still growing could be enslaved, bound by the rules that governed their kind. But once they became kings, they were subject to no restrictions whatsoever. And so perish. A surge of divine power manifested. An attack surpassing countless levels of understanding. Just a single strike hurtling toward Sayak. No, I don't want to die. Realm Passage. Sayak directly unleashed the Realm Passage technique. This signature art of the realm beasts was indeed formidable. Even with his divine body bound by the God King's divine power, he could still escape. Sayak directly unleashed a maximum power Realm Passage. As long as he could escape this place, he could change his aura, and then even a God King would be incapable of finding him. But Haisha God King merely smiled casually. The Realm Passage is indeed impressive. What is truly formidable, however, is the Realm Passage when unleashed by a powerful practitioner. The passage you have unleashed is still far too fragile. If it had been a Realm Beast King at the Chaos Sovereign level, then even he might not be able to shatter the Realm Passage. But the terrifying thing about the Realm Passage was that it could be used in any situation, and once unleashed, escape was virtually assured. Moreover, the Realm Passage itself was constructed from divine power. Sayak's divine body was 12 light years in size. Utterly insignificant in the eyes of a God King. A single axe stroke cleft forth. Haisha God King moved with all his might. This strike was the full power blow of a God King. The colossal axe slammed into the Realm Passage. Boom! The Realm Passage was shattered by Haisha God King's axe. If the Realm Passage had been unleashed by a God King level Realm Beast King, I would not be able to shake it in the slightest. Unfortunately, your Realm Passage is far too brittle. On the ground, Sayak, who had been about to step into the Realm Passage, came crashing down. His divine power was almost completely spent. All he could do now was stay where he was and await death. Elder brother, spare me. I beg you, spare me. Chen Ao continued to watch Sayak with that same smile. Seeing that smile, Sayak was instantly plunged into utter despair. This Chen Ao, as always, was ruthlessly merciless. Very well. I was never suited to become a king anyway. I can only blame my own greed. If I had let a powerful realm beast become the king, perhaps the great king would not have met such a miserable end. With that, Sayak directly self-destructed. Watching Sayak self-destruct, Chen Ao's expression did not change in the slightest. Haisha God King, for his part, remained even more composed. Killing Sayak could only be described as an accident. After all, very few realm beasts were ever slain at such a weak stage of life. Realm beast kings that managed to reach the origin continent were normally at the peak of eternity, bordering on the Chaos Sovereign level. After concealing themselves for a short period, they would become Chaos Sovereigns. By that time, a realm beast king with a divine body spanning several thousand light years could escape even from a God King. In the time to come, cultivate diligently and strive to obtain a spot. Haisha God King looked at Chen Ao. This disciple understands. Chen Ao then took his leave. He could not make any further progress in cultivation for the time being, so he might as well find some opponents to test his skills against. Having obtained a top-grade God King Divine Sword, and the chess sword Chen Ao's strength increased once more, I can now fight a mid-stage Chaos Sovereign head-on. Chen Ao assessed his own strength and could only say that the E-skill was the true divine skill. Its true damage defied all logic. With no resources in hand and no way to improve his secret arts, in a short time Chen Ao looked toward the south where a city stood. Anming City. First he took a teleportation array to the edge of the Haoyan sect, then teleported toward the southwest. Since he had traveled this route before, the way back was now extremely easy. However, the time saved was still not much. Roughly 1500 years later Chen Ao arrived at Anming City. If it were anyone else, 8 times out of 10 they would not come seeking revenge. But then again, who am I? I am Chen Ao. Great sword in hand, Chen Ao teleported directly within Anming City. After all, Anming City was merely an eternal level force. The land around it was barren, and no God King or Chaos Sovereign was willing to occupy it, or otherwise, it would never have been left to the city lord of Anming. On the Chiyuan continent, buffer zones existed between the territories of various God King forces. On one hand, they kept forces from directly bordering one another and sparking conflict, or on the other, these areas were dispensable. They produced few resources and were not worth the effort to occupy. If a God King force wanted to take control of a region, it would need experts at or above the Eternal Realm to build cities and ensure the city's safety. Moreover, if the neighboring territory belonged to another God King force, the city lord would have to be a Chaos Sovereign. An eternal true God could not hold things down. But Chaos Sovereigns were exceedingly rare. How could they be made city lords? A God King force's border was so long that defending it completely would require at least 1,000 Chaos Sovereigns arrayed around its perimeter. There simply were not enough Chaos Sovereigns. Therefore, the major God King forces all left buffer zones, and these buffer zones were not small, usually hundreds of thousands of li wide. These buffer zones, hundreds of thousands of li wide and tens of millions of li long, were the places where lone eternal true gods or Chaos Sovereigns ruled supreme. The rules of Anming City forbade teleportation within the city formation, but Chen Ao simply ignored that rule. Not long after he entered the city formation, warship after warship sailed toward him. Stop right there. This is the territory of Anming City. Teleportation is forbidden. Seeing the warships, Chen Ao immediately raised his hand and boundless divine power swept over them. How dare you? Realizing that Chen Ao was even trying to suppress and seize their warships, the eternal true gods, leading the group, bellowed and charged at him one after another. Sensing their divine power auras, Chen Ao shook his head. Independent forces may be free, but in the end they are far too weak. The two eternal true gods erupted with their full divine power auras, yet they still seemed very weak. Their divine bodies were probably only at the 100 billion level, far short of even 1 light year. This was the difference between independent forces and God King forces. Under a God King force, even an ordinary void true god usually had a divine body in the hundreds of billions to trillions, and an eternal true god's body was never below 1 light year. That's right. Those who could join a God King force were the elites and geniuses of their rank. These eternal true gods were not unwilling to join a God King force. They simply could not get in. There were 3 early-stage eternal true gods in total. The great sword in Chen Ao's hand gleamed. One slash struck all 3, and their auras instantly weakened by a large margin. Their treasures were not particularly precious. After all, they were subordinates of a city lord. So the 3 all wore top-grade eternal divine armor. Even so, Chen Ao's attack was able to weaken them by roughly 1 part in 100,000 to 1 part in a million. A tremendous reduction. But the gap was too vast. Chen Ao was a mid-stage Chaos Sovereign, while his opponents were only early-stage eternal true gods. A difference of 6 levels. Thus that 1 slash carved away hundreds of billions of light years from these eternal true gods' divine bodies. Even the one whose divine power aura weakened the least among the 3 had lost more than half. Struck by that sword, the 3, who had been about to counterattack, were terrified out of their wits. A Chaos Sovereign, you are a Chaos Sovereign. The 3 did not even think of fleeing, and immediately began to beg for mercy. We pay our respects, Sovereign. Please, Sovereign, spare us. Chen Ao said nothing and simply swung out a second strike. In the distance, the city lord of Anming woke from his comprehension of a secret art. A Chaos Sovereign. Why would one come to Anming City and kill my subordinates? The deaths of 3 early-stage eternal subordinates did not trouble the city lord of Anming. After all, although Eternals were experts, eternal true gods were not truly rare given the accumulation of endless time. Quite a few early-stage eternal true gods could be found among those tribes, so he could easily recruit more. What puzzled him was the newcomer's purpose. My Anming City is already so barren. Surely no Chaos Sovereign would take a fancy to it. There were no tribes for dozens of li around his Anming City. First, because he was very domineering, a second, because the land was too barren to support other tribes. Even sustaining a single city was difficult. Being a city lord did not really matter in itself. The true benefit was having subordinates gather resources for him, helping him cultivate and become stronger. Thanks to teleportation, Chen Ao quickly arrived at Anming City. The city lord soon came out as well. You are not a chaos sovereign. You are an eternal true god like me. The moment he saw Chen Ao, the city lord confirmed Chen Ao's realm. That's right, I am also an eternal. May I ask what business you have in my Anming city? The city lord frowned. If he could send Chen Ao away, he would rather avoid trouble. Since Chen Ao could instantly kill early-stage Eternals, his strength was probably a bit higher than his own. His own strength was at peak Eternal, and with the void-level divine power burning secret art he had mastered, he could be even stronger. My purpose is revenge. To destroy this Anming city. The city lord's 6 pairs of eyes all opened at once. Sir, what is the meaning of this? I swear I have never wronged you. Why do you want to destroy my Anming city? No, you did wrong me. And you even hunted me down. The city lord tried to argue, but Chen Ao gave him no chance to speak. He teleported close and slashed down with his sword. The city lord hurriedly raised his saber to block. The instant he did, his expression changed drastically. This had already surpassed the combat power of an early-stage chaos sovereign. In the past he had crossed hands with an early-stage sovereign, and that opponent's strength absolutely could not match Chen Ao's. Sir, please stop. Is there some misunderstanding? No, there isn't. You must die today. During the fight, Chen Ao confirmed the city lord's strength peak eternal, or rather close to the eternal limit. But such strength was nearly 3 levels below his own, so it was easily crushed. The chest sword sea spread open, over 1,000 divine swords interlaced through the air, enveloping everyone in Anming City's core, and a bloody storm followed. Those who occupied core positions were certainly all connected to the city lord. The city lord wanted to flee. No force was more important than his own person. But Chen Ao was too strong. He had no chance to escape. His divine body, less than 2 light years in size, was rapidly consumed. Each sword strike took away tens of billions of kilometers at a rate of 5 or 6 strikes per second. The opponent's body, only about 13 or 14 trillion kilometers, could not hold out for even a few minutes. 3 minutes later, the city lord's aura was extinguished and everything around was swept clean by Chen Ao. The next moment, countless weak avatars appeared and began collecting the resources for him. Speaking of avatars, divine power lifeforms could also create them. However, the world beast warriors of a world beast king had complete souls and did not possess the fragility of avatars. That was what made the world beast king enviable. Avatars could only handle small tasks such as looking for resources. After a full 10 years of searching, Chen Ao finally obtained the compiled data. So poor. Altogether it only amounted to a little over 300 billion contribution points. Merely the equivalent of a few top 100 void true gods. He had no interest in the remaining scraps. After all, if even a city lord was this poor, those on the outskirts must be even poorer. Besides, he was not Sayak, who could raise his strength by devouring. Without wasting much time, Chen Ao began the return to the Haotian sect. Killing a city lord in a buffer zone was not something anyone would care about. If anyone expressed displeasure, Chen Ao would say that his master was Haisha God King, and they could take the matter up with his master. Back at the Haotian sect, Chen Ao simply exchanged the gains from his journey for earth source crystals, then continued expanding his divine body. It was better than nothing. After absorbing the earth source crystals, Chen Ao turned his gaze toward the Monli tribe. Over this long period he had learned clearly that the eternal true god who had ambushed him on the battlefield was Xueju of the Monli tribe. This Xueju was also a seasoned eternal true god, an absolute peak eternal existence. By unleashing a bloodline burning secret art, he could reach the eternal limit. Specifically the kind of eternal limit that was extremely close to a chaos sovereign. It was because of such strength that Xueju could garrison the city of Sholi not far from the battlefield. That was the outermost city of the Monli tribe. Those capable of guarding such a city were all extremely powerful. Xueju, you dared to ambush me. Then let you become my sacrificial offering. Xueju, who was extremely close to a chaos sovereign, was about the same as Chen Ao in strength. If he did not use a god king divine weapon and the divine power burning secret art, his strength would only be at the eternal limit. I can use his pressure to make a breakthrough. Chen Ao's current strength had already met the requirements to participate in the faction qualification war. Even among all past participants he counted as one of the stronger ones. However, to seize as many resources as possible, this was still not enough. Every time he defeated an opponent he could obtain 1 quadrillion contribution points. But what he wanted was not 1 quadrillion sect contribution points, it was 5 quadrillion. When faced with resources he chose to have them all. 5 quadrillion would be enough to allow his divine body to reach 6,000 light-years. With additional accumulation over time, he could fully reach the 10,000 light-year level of a God King. If he encountered some opportunity then, after breaking through to God King, he could be on the same level as Haisha God King. The oath to the Sure Kingdom still has to be fulfilled. For God Kings, Zuoshank also dug a pit for me. As his thoughts drifted, Chen Ao had already arrived at the junction of the battlefield between the Haotian sect and the Monli tribe. Once past this point, he would reach the Monli tribe city guarded by Xueju. Then I'll start with Xueju. Chen Ao continued teleporting and soon arrived at the Monli tribe city. Shuejiu, come out, come out. Shouts echoed through the void, every call itself a secret art that had reached the eternal level capable of enveloping the entire colossal city. Above the great city hung a formation laid down by the Monli tribe's god king, and he was unwilling to step into it casually. Once inside, his strength would be suppressed, and with one misstep he might even die there. Although his undying blood was kept by the Haisha god king, so he had no need to fear true death. Still, if he could avoid dying, that was for the best. Come out, come out. Wave after wave of sound poured into Shuejiu's ears. Shuejiu, who had been contemplating the laws, suddenly opened his eyes. Who dares to shout within the territory of my Monli tribe? Shuejiu teleported repeatedly. The range protected by the formation was enormous. Even if he teleported without caring about the cost and erupted with all his speed, it would still take several hours to reach the outside of the formation. Whoever had come would certainly not enter the city formation. Everyone understood that. After a full half-day, Shuejiu followed the voice and arrived before Chen Ao. Who are you? Shuejiu looked at Chen Ao. In his recollection, he had never seen Chen Ao before. Earlier, when he had ambushed Chen Ao had been a void true god. Moreover, his appearance had been altered and his aura was also different from now. Besides, when one broke through to a higher realm, divine power naturally transformed. If Chen Ao did not speak, Shuejiu could not possibly recognize him. You ambushed me on the battlefield, yet you have forgotten me so soon. Chen Ao spoke. The initially furious Shuejiu showed a trace of astonishment at his words. You, that void true god. You have broken through to eternal. Shuejiu's face gradually darkened. He had never expected that the Haotian sect prodigy he had wanted to kill by ambush had already broken through. Moreover, judging by the present situation, Chen Ao had clearly come to take revenge. That's right. I just broke through, so here I am to settle the score with you. I admit you are a genius, but void level and eternal level are different. No matter how remarkable a genius is, time is needed to settle and accumulate. You who just broke through are nothing in front of me. Time could compensate for talent. He had lived for hundreds of Kalpa years, and he had been an eternal true god for over 300 Kalpa years. How could the foundation he had accumulated be compared with Chen Ao's? Whether I can do it. Just try it and you will know. Chen Ao's gaze turned sharp. A divine sword appeared in his hand. It was his original weapon, an eternal supreme grade mechanical flow weapon. At his current realm, this weapon allowed him to fully unleash his strength. As for the system and the divine power burning secret art, he did not intend to use them. He would simply fight with the power of his own innate secret art, using the battle to let that secret art break through to a higher level. You overestimate yourself. Shuejiu snorted. With a casual swing, he slashed out with his saber, intending to force Chen Ao back. In Shuejiu's view, even if Chen Ao had broken through to eternal with his level of secret art, his strength would at best reach eternal high rank. Even with the divine power burning secret art, he would only be at eternal peak. Shuejiu, on the other hand, had a secret art at the eternal peak level. Paired with the bloodline burning secret art, he would directly reach eternal limit. That was one entire level above Chen Ao. Were it not that a one-level gap made killing him difficult, he would have wanted to ruthlessly torment Chen Ao, and make Chen Ao understand the immensity of heaven and earth. He was casual. This strike was rather casual, meant only to make Chen Ao back down. To contend with him, Chen Ao would need at least several Kalpa years of accumulated foundation. But the moment saber and sword met, Shuejiu's expression changed, because he could feel that Chen Ao's secret art was extremely powerful. Is this a Chaos Sovereign elementary secret art? You broke through only a short while ago, yet you already created a Chaos Sovereign secret art. Shuejiu cried out in shock. His alarm was justified. He too had been a genius at the void level. Although he was not one of those heaven-defying beings in the top 10, he was still ranked within the top 100. And he had already broken through to eternal over 300 Kalpa years ago. It should not be. Talent should not have such a huge gap. I broke through to eternal over 300 Kalpa years ago, and the secret art I created was still one step away from Chaos Sovereign. Yet you have already created a Chaos Sovereign secret art. Chen Ao wasted no words. He continued swinging the divine sword in his hand, chopping at Shuejiu. Facing the seemingly light and airy sword strike, Shuejiu no longer dared to be careless. Both had an eternal level foundation. Chen Ao's secret art was one level stronger than his, which meant his strength was inferior to Chen Ao's. How could he still afford to be arrogant? After just a few sword exchanges, Shuejiu was completely suppressed by Chen Ao. The bystanders below, who had been ready to watch Shuejiu unleash his might, suddenly covered their mouths, unable to believe their eyes. Seeing himself suppressed by Chen Ao, a flash of fury passed through Shuejiu's eyes. Damn it! Do you think this is enough to suppress me? Shuejiu roared angrily, then released a dense blood-red halo around himself. This was an eternal level bloodline burning secret art. In an instant, Shuejiu's strength rose by one level, and the situation in which he had been suppressed in every exchange immediately improved. Shuejiu and Chen Ao were now almost evenly matched. Ha ha ha! An eternal level bloodline burning secret art. You do not have one, do you? Shuejiu laughed smugly as he watched the situation instantly reverse in his favor. Eternal level secret arts were too expensive. Even he had spent nearly 10 Kulpa years of accumulated resources to exchange for this one secret art enough to elevate his battle power by a level. And Chen Ao had broken through so recently. How could he possibly possess an eternal level divine power burning secret art? Did he have time to accumulate contributions and exchange them for a secret art? No matter how extraordinary your talent is, without a burning secret art you cannot suppress me. At the same time Shuejiu remained smug. His beast body was a full 30 light-years far surpassing a void true god. On what grounds could Chen Ao fight him? What could he use to fight him? The situation suddenly turned for the better. Facing Chen Ao's attacks that could shatter the void time, and again Shuejiu appeared completely at ease. Time is the true way. Even a god king needs countless Kulpa years of accumulation before he can truly dominate all directions. Chen Ao watched Shuejiu grumbling, his expression somewhat strange. Actually, I have all of that. And more than you. It is just that I am using you as a training target. Leave at once. You are no match for me and I cannot kill you either, so do not keep pestering me. After several hours of battle, Shuejiu's beast body had already consumed more than 1 light year. Battling a divine power lifeform consumed the beast body greatly, and he believed Chen Ao's consumption was not small either. Fighting like this held no meaning. Stop your endless chatter. This time one of us has to die. Chen Ao said calmly. Humph. Since you are seeking death, I will grant it to you. Shuejiu turned ruthless and struck even harder. Actually, using more or less force made no difference. After all, it was a contest of attrition between divine power and beast power. It was just that a fiercer expression somehow felt as if it made one's strength increase just a little. The battle continued. The two were simply hacking at each other. A dodging had little meaning, so it was better to be direct. Every strike biting into flesh. Time came to the 10th day. Chen Ao fought with extreme madness, as if he did not mind falling here at all. That was only natural. Continuous battle drove one insane, as if once blows were exchanged they could not stop. After 10 days of battle, Chen Ao had long discarded certain misgivings, and his sword technique appeared ever more exquisite. The secret patterns he carved ever more profound. On the other side, Shuejiu was already chilled with terror. Of his 30 light-years of beast power, less than 3 light-years remained. And that madman Chen Ao was still attacking without pause. Madman. At a realm like this, he is still thinking of using battle to break through. Shuejiu was locked in a death struggle by Chen Ao. Below was the city he guarded, and his pride made him unwilling to flee. If he fled, he would never have the face to continue guarding this place. Moreover, in his heart, he did not want to flee. His view of Chen Ao had not changed. He still felt Chen Ao was inferior to him. At least inferior to him, who had accumulated several hundred Kulpa years. Before, he was only a little brat whose true god heart I nearly shattered with one blow. How could he in such a short time become stronger than me? Absolutely impossible. He too was a genius. His whole life he had never been weaker than anyone else. How had it come to this? Time continued onward. Chen Ao's secret art seemed to reach a limit, then suddenly underwent a new transformation. Shuejiu's eyes were nearly split with fury. Mad. Truly mad. Creating a Chaos Sovereign elementary secret art was not enough. This quickly he has already reached Chaos Sovereign intermediate. Mad. Seeing Chen Ao break through, Shuejiu knew he could no longer be a match. His beast power was down to only 1 light year. Call for help. Endlessly call for help. Shuejiu felt that he might be in real trouble. The formation could only weaken one's strength. It was equivalent to a fixed version of a supreme domain treasure. But Chen Ao's strength had broken through. If he still had a great amount of divine body left, he would definitely withstand the formation and kill him. Therefore he must call for help. Shuejiu, thank you for helping me this once, and letting my strength break through. So now let me show you my strongest power. Chen Ao smiled. Having reached his current realm, unless a god king made a move, it was fundamentally impossible to kill him. And god kings would not act lightly. This was the rule. After all, every god king had a faction, and the consequences of breaking the rules would be dire. In the Yuanshi universe there were lone supremes, but that was because the peak factions had nothing to offer them. But on the Qiyuan continent there were no lone god kings because factions could offer god kings too much. No god king could refuse a vast divine body and an ocean of cosmic origin. The next moment black mist flickered around Chen Ao. This was the eternal level divine power burning secret art, and the weapon in Chen Ao's hand had been switched to a god king weapon. At this moment Chen Ao's strength directly reached Chaos Sovereign intermediate power, and even among Chaos Sovereign intermediates he was not among the weakest. The chess sword C was useless. The chess sword C suited long-term attritional combat. In an explosive battle its effect was not very obvious. Boom! One sword strike lashed out. Shuejiu's eyes turned blood red, because his beast power lost nearly half a light year in a single instant. No, you cannot be this strong. After feeling that sword strike, Shuejiu turned and fled. If he escaped into the formation and waited for other experts of the Manli tribe to arrive, he would still have a chance to live. He only needed to buy a little time. Why struggle? It will only keep you alive for a few more minutes. Chen Ao swooped down and charged into the city formation's range. Shuejiu must die. If it were before his strength breakthrough, or if Shuejiu's divine body had not suffered great losses, Chen Ao would not have pursued him into the city's formation. But now Shuejiu's beast body was at most only 1 light year remaining. As long as he swung his sword 2 or 3 times, he could directly slay him. Under such circumstances, even forcibly enduring the attacks and suppression of the city formation did not matter. It would only consume a bit more beast power and take a bit more time. As long as he could achieve the goal of killing Shuejiu, it was enough. Therefore Chen Ao resolutely chased into the formation. Shuejiu looked back at Chen Ao in terror. He had already expected Chen Ao to pursue him, but he simply could not do anything. The formation could delay him, but it could not save him. Powerful experts of my Manli tribe are about to descend. If you don't leave now, soon you won't be able to. You needn't worry about that. At least you won't live to see that moment. Within the formation, Chen Ao still used short-distance teleportation, quickly closing in on Shuejiu. Shuejiu roared in terror. Does your Haoyan sect want to start a war with my Manli tribe? Chen Ao paid no attention to Shuejiu's threat, and only swung his sword. Shuejiu took a sword blow and his beast body shrank by half a light year once again. No, you can't kill me. Shuejiu kept howling. From afar a voice came. Boy of the Haoyan sect, stop right there. This is my Manli tribe's territory. Chen Ao neither looked at the newcomer, nor stopped his pursuit of Shuejiu. A mere few seconds later Shuejiu let out a feeble roar, and then his aura dissipated. Chen Ao collected Shuejiu's corpse and quickly left the formation. The newcomer was a chaos sovereign. If he stayed in the formation he would suffer greatly in a battle. Chen Ao stepped out of the formation, then looked at the newcomer. So it's Sovereign Huiji of the Manli tribe. May I ask what business Sovereign Huiji has with me? Sovereign Huiji stared coldly at Chen Ao. Save that useless talk. You dare to kill an expert of my Manli tribe within its sphere of influence. Your nerve is not small. An eternal true god was extremely important to a god king's strength, serving as a governor of a frontier region. And Shuejiu was not an ordinary eternal true god. As the city lord guarding the border, his strength reached the eternal limit and his personal secret arts had also reached the eternal pinnacle. With such strength he was actually only 1 step short of a chaos sovereign. Even within a god king's faction there were at most a few dozen chaos sovereigns. Just this number alone shows how high their status was. Yet Chen Ao had actually killed such a chaos sovereign seed within the territory of the Manli tribe. Such an act would not be surprising even if the leader of the Manli tribe, that god king, personally made a move. Killed then killed. What's the big deal? Chen Ao chuckled. We are not in the same camp anyway. What is wrong with me killing him alone? Chen Ao was not a chaos sovereign bullying the weak, nor did he gather a group of people to outnumber the opponent. Killing an eternal true god one-on-one was nothing much. If Chen Ao had the strength to kill the Sovereign Huiji before him on the spot, the Haoyan sect master would also shelter him. This was the foundation of a faction's development. Without life and death battles one could not grow stronger and the faction would be finished. In other places there might be matters of swallowing humiliation and accommodating, but on the origin continent they did not exist. Everyone was tougher and firmer than the next. If you dared to touch me, I dared to kill you. Sovereign Huiji gnashed his teeth. But he was a reserve chaos sovereign of my Manli tribe. How can I let you kill him so easily? Chen Ao shook his head. Fine, don't say these useless things. If Sovereign Huiji wants to weigh my abilities, then just come. Or perhaps Sovereign Huiji can ask your leader to attack me. How audacious! Sovereign Huiji bellowed and a mountain-like object appeared in his hand. This mountain pressed down from above directly onto Chen Ao. Chen Ao's eyes narrowed slightly as he watched this move from Sovereign Huiji. In fact, he had previously investigated what moves the Manli tribe might make, and he had also figured out all the sovereigns of the Manli tribe. Among them Sovereign Huiji was a member that Chen Ao paid close attention to, because the city guarded by Sovereign Huiji was the closest to here and his strength was relatively strong. He was a mid-level chaos sovereign. As a core member of the Manli tribe, Sovereign Huiji naturally possessed a secret art of burning bloodline. In cross-dire battles, such a burning secret art made a huge difference. If an eternal level burning secret art could raise his strength by 1 tier, then a chaos sovereign level burning secret art was equivalent to 1.5 tiers relative to the eternal level. Therefore, when Chen Ao fought him, Sovereign Huiji's actual strength was infinitely close to the peak of chaos sovereigns. As for Chen Ao's strength quantified, he was a mid-level chaos sovereign but just barely entered at the level that had not yet perfected the mid-level secret art. If I use all my strength combined with the chest sword C, I can also reach the normal standard of a mid-level chaos sovereign, and the longer the battle, the stronger my chest sword C becomes. Sovereign Huiji's beast body was not considered large, being only a little over 53 billion light-years. It was naturally larger than Chen Ao's. After all, as Chaos Sovereigns who had lived for over 1,000 reincarnation years, even eating pork once a year would have accumulated countless times. The heavy peak pressed down and Chen Ao raised his sword to block. Unsurprisingly, he was sent reeling back repeatedly. But at that moment the chest sword sea had already spread out. It began to take effect. Sovereign Huiji completely ignored the so-called chest sword sea. Treasures of divine power lifeforms were useless to them. Both Xuejiu and Huiji used weapons condensed from large amounts of special stones. They relied solely on hardness and weight to enhance their strength. It was rumored that the leader of the Monli tribe Stone Saber had a mass equivalent to the sum of 10 million eternal-grade miniature universes, formed by countless strange stones, refined over thousands of reincarnation years. The sheer impact force of each of his attacks could easily annihilate the 100 billion light-year divine body of an eternal true god. Sovereign Huiji followed the same path, relying on boundless weight and impact to boost his strength. Compared with the supreme treasures of divine power lifeforms, the method was crude but very effective. Chen Ao checked the consumption of his divine body. This single strike had cost him nearly 100 billion kilometers. Worthy to be called an old veteran sovereign powerhouse. In the previous battle with Xuejiu, each attack had cost him at most several 100 million kilometers of divine body, and that was even because he deliberately suppressed his strength. But now this sovereign had casually knocked off 100 billion kilometers from his full-strength divine body with one strike. Terrifying as that was, no wonder he dares to challenge me. His strength has actually reached the mid-level standard of a Chaos Sovereign. This could be roughly judged from Chen Ao's attacking methods. His secret art attacks and his opponent's attacks were actually not far apart, they were on the same level. What Huiji relied on was ultimately his accumulated heritage and realm. Sovereign Huiji, you cannot take me down. At most you can only consume a little of my divine body. Chen Ao looked at Sovereign Huiji. He was unwilling to fight this meaningless battle mainly because being beaten down was unpleasant. Better to wait until his strength grew, then come straight over and wipe the opponent out. Whether I can take you down or not, only by continuing the fight will we know. Chen Ao deeply exhaled. These people really were single-minded. Since the opponent wanted to fight, Chen Ao had no need to retreat. He could take this opportunity to deduce and refine the mid-level Chaos Sovereign secret art he had just created. Sovereign Huiji continuously urged the mountain in his hand, pressing it against Chen Ao time and again, and Chen Ao did his utmost to block each time. Blocking was extremely difficult. Every time he was smashed by Huiji and sent tumbling through the void. This special mountain treasure, condensed from who knew how many special rocks, was enormous in weight. Coupled with Huiji's beast power, every strike was heavy and forceful with extremely strong impact. Once, twice. Chen Ao never avoided the huge peaks that kept coming at him. Without experiencing power, one cannot become powerful. The two fought for dozens of days. Chen Ao's divine body was more than half consumed, and the shockwaves of their battle nearly smashed the city below to pieces. The beings who wanted to watch the battle had long since taken refuge, not daring to approach. In Sovereign Huiji's eyes flickered a solemn expression. Not because of Chen Ao's strength, but because he was astonished by Chen Ao's divine body. You are merely a newly advanced eternal. How can your divine body be so vast? His beast power had already consumed nearly a third. With his strength being nearly 2 levels higher than Chen Ao's, this should not have been the case. Just as Sovereign Huiji was howling, a rebuke came from afar. Huiji, enough. You cannot take down my Haoyan Sect's Chen Ao anyway. Stop wasting time here. Thunder boomed and a being like a giant serpent came from the void. The serpent had 8 legs and dense arcs of lightning flashed all over its body. Huiji, this ends here. If you still want to fight, I can keep you company. Huiji looked at the serpent, being a trace of fear flashing in his eyes. This was one of the top 5 powerhouses of the Haoyan Sect. A super expert whose strength had already reached the limit of Chaos Sovereign's Sovereign Tianqiu. As a peak Chaos Sovereign Tianqiu might at some unknown time take that final step and achieve God King. He was simply not someone Huiji could compare to. Tianqiu, your Haoyan Sect killed the eternal peak expert of my Monli tribe. This matter is not over. Humph, killed is killed. Chen Ao killed him according to the rules. It was neither a sneak attack nor a group attack. What does your Monli tribe want to do about it? Sovereign Tianqiu then said, if you are dissatisfied, you can ask your God King to make a move. My Haoyan Sect's God King Haisha precisely wants to test the strength of your Monli tribe's leader. Hearing Tianqiu's words, Huiji immediately looked at Chen Ao. The fact that Chen Ao could actually get God King Haisha to stand forward left no doubt that the previous rumors were true. What a great fortune to be able to become a disciple of God King Haisha. Huiji was extremely envious of Chen Ao. Although he was a Chaos Sovereign, the gap with a God King was far too huge. Not to mention strength. In terms of divine body volume alone, the two differed by hundreds of times with no basis for comparison. Just average. Chen Ao said casually. Hearing Chen Ao's words, both Tianqiu and Huiji became dejected. How lucky was it to be accepted under a God King? Do not think that Tianqiu was only one step away from a god king, but that step was of unknown enormous size. It was not only strength and realm, even becoming a god. The god king too faced a colossal problem. Merely surviving as a god king was naturally simple, but expanding his divine body to tens of thousands of light years and becoming a true god king. That was the true difficulty. A chaos sovereign's divine body was generally only a few hundred light years. Tianqiu, for example, was at the peak of chaos sovereign, and had accumulated thousands of reincarnation epochs, yet his divine body was merely a little over 700 light years. That was not even 1,000 light years, let alone 10,000. And without 10,000 light years one could not be considered a true god king. In battle with another god king, a person like that would burn himself out before long. Yet with a god king's personal nurturing one could at least have a divine body of over 1,000 light years. That was already extremely impressive. God King Haisha gave Chen Ao resources worth 1 quadrillion contribution points in a single stroke, and as time passed Haisha would give even more. These are the perks then. Enough Chen Ao. Come back with me. Tianqiu ignored Huizhi, completely swept Chen Ao up and departed. Before Tianqiu, Chen Ao had no power to resist and was easily swept away. Sovereign Huizhi could only hurl a few threatening words, and then watch Tianqiu bear Chen Ao off. Chen Ao followed Sovereign Tianqiu back to the Haoyan sect and said respectfully, "Thank you Sovereign Tianqiu for saving me." Repaying the favor was out of the question. He did not have a single cent to his name. With what could he repay it? Sovereign Tianqiu said with a smile, God King Haisha asked me to make this trip. After all, you have been accumulating strength for only a short time. Even if your mystic art has reached the required level, your actual combat strength is still a bit lacking. Chen Ao nodded and did not argue. Huizhi, however, had not fared well either. Over those few days Chen Ao's chess sword C had already exerted considerable effect. It looked as though Chen Ao was being beaten without the slightest chance to fight back, but in reality the consumption gap between Chen Ao's divine power and Huizhi's beast power was not especially large. Roughly a 3-to-2 ratio. This was still because the two had different life forms and the fight had lasted too briefly. If both were divine power life forms, the battle could easily stretch into years, even hundreds of years. By then the true horror of the chess sword C would become clear. Even an opponent with greater strength could never outlast him. Chen Ao took his leave of Sovereign Tianqiu, then went to the Haisha Divine Temple to pay his respects and express his gratitude. After all, it was God King Haisha's word that had enabled Sovereign Tianqiu to rescue him, otherwise, he would probably have had to flee in disgrace. Thank you, Master, for the rescue. We are master and disciple. Such a small matter is only right. Haisha watched Chen Ao with tremendous satisfaction. He had already seen the battle between Chen Ao and Huizhi. To hold his own against Huizhi at a 3-to-7 ratio was already quite remarkable. Chen Ao had only been cultivating for such a short time, while Huizhi had been a chaos sovereign for over 1,000 reincarnation epochs. With such different spans of accumulated time, their combat power was naturally worlds apart. But what happened to your divine body? God King Haisha asked, somewhat puzzled. According to his expectations, the resources Chen Ao had obtained could at most raise his body to a little over 100 light years. Yet judging from the battle, Chen Ao's divine body was at least 500 light years to begin with. Where did Chen Ao get so many resources? This is but a stroke of fortune your disciple encountered, which is how I managed to expand my divine body to its current scale. God King Haisha gave Chen Ao a long probing look. Could it be an inheritance? He knew Chen Ao had a God King's inheritance. Earlier, after breaking through to eternity, Chen Ao had gone out once. It was possible that upon reaching eternity, he had been able to claim the legacy. Just like Huyan Bo on Earth, who left his disciples assets of different magnitudes at different stages, Chen Ao was very likely in a similar situation. A living God King was not the same as a fallen one. A living God King had to strengthen himself so his resources could not support too many people. The advantage was that he could shelter his disciples. A fallen God King left everything to his disciples, but the drawback was that he could provide no other help. God King Haisha did not plan to press further. Having your own opportunities is a good thing, but do not forget the forthcoming sect wager. How could Chen Ao forget? Even if he forgot his own surname, he would never forget something like that. That concerned a full 5 quadrillion in sect contribution. Master, I can take on 5 at once. That means I can concentrate all the resources awarded by the sect on myself, right? I want them all. Of course you can. God King Haisha looked at Chen Ao with a beaming smile. Chen Ao truly was heaven-defying. He had only cultivated for such a short time, yet his strength was already formidable, having reached the mid-tier level among chaos sovereigns. Geniuses like this were hard to find even among the forces of God Kings. Anyone with such strength would probably have broken through to chaos sovereign long ago. In fact, Chen Ao could break through at any moment. In the previous battle, the last fragment of his insight into the essence of life and destruction had reached perfection. He only needed a little time to advance to chaos sovereign. However, with 5 5 quadrillion in contribution resources right there in front of him, he naturally could not bear to leave it behind. As long as you can defeat the disciples' combined assault, you may represent the Haotian sect alone. Every opponent you defeat will earn you 1 quadrillion in sect contribution. That is wonderful. The Haotian sect gave rewards precisely to nurture its disciples. In the absence of better options, it could only distribute the resources evenly among 5 eternal true gods. But that was not the original intention. If an eternal true god appeared who was powerful enough, all these resources could be concentrated in one person. Cultivating one supreme expert was definitely more in line with the sect's needs than cultivating 5 ordinary ones. After all, this was a world that looked to apex combat power. After leaving the Haisha Divine Temple, Chen Ao began to comprehend his mystic art. In the previous battle, he had touched the threshold of a mid-tier Chaos Sovereign mystic art, but had only deduced a small portion since then. Now he finally had the chance to continue perfecting the mystic art. With the system's enhancement to his comprehension, this kind of work was far too easy for him. In 100 million years, he could create tens of thousands of mid-tier Chaos Sovereign mystic arts. They covered offense, defense, and every other aspect. Time slipped gently by while Chen Ao comprehended mystic arts. 10,000 years and 100 million years seemed to make no difference at all. Come see me immediately. As Chen Ao was immersed in comprehending his mystic art, God King Haisha's voice suddenly sounded beside his ear. The voice was extremely gentle, as if faintly woven into the laws themselves, so it caused no discomfort to Chen Ao in the midst of his contemplation. Awakening of his own accord, Chen Ao headed for the Haisha Divine Temple. Come follow your master to meet the sect master. The selection of candidates will be decided in the sect master's palace. Chen Ao nodded. He was also a little curious about the mysterious Haotian sect master. The Haotian sect master was ranked among the top 3 powerhouses of the dozens of God King level forces in the surrounding region. The first was the Realm Beast King, there was no doubt about that. And for the Haotian sect master to rank among the top 3 of over 100 God Kings was ample proof of his strength. Outsiders did not know the Haotian sect master's name, and simply addressed him as such. God King Haisha had not actually needed to bring Chen Ao along, but having finally accepted a disciple, he naturally wanted to show him off before the sect master. As a man of sentiment, God King Haisha loved to show off even though he was an exalted God King, especially when others did not have what he had. At such times his craving for display became especially obvious. Clearly Chen Ao was enough for him to boast about in front of the Haotian sect master. God King Haisha led Chen Ao into the great hall of the Haotian sect master, where the surroundings were so lush and green it felt as if they had stepped into a forest. The sect master's true body is a plant-type lifeform, so he is accustomed to this kind of environment. At that, Chen Ao became even more surprised. A plant-type lifeform. Plant-type lifeforms were extremely powerful in the early stage after all because they were huge and would keep growing larger as time passed. But their ceiling was relatively low and their comprehension was poor, making it very hard for them to become supreme experts. Yes, plant-type lifeforms. Their life form has handed the sect master an enormous advantage. God King Haisha said with a sigh. I am merely an ordinary lifeform. Even with a 90,000-fold gene level, and even though my master exhausted everything, he had my divine body was only 9 light years when I first entered True God. And the sect master, when he first entered True God, he already had a full 800 light years. Chen Ao gasped. 800 light years upon becoming a True God. With a 100,000-fold gene level, he had become a True God with a divine body of only 20 light years. Yes, 800 light years. You know that at 60,000-fold genes the divine body can expand by 1,000-fold. When the sect master was a law lord, his divine body was already close to 1 light year. At 60,000-fold genes, he already had a divine body of over 800 light years. Thus, even when breaking through to True God, he needed no resources at all and directly possessed a True God divine body of over 800 light years. Expanding the divine body required tremendous, almost absurd amounts of resources. But if one only used them to absorb and replenish divine power, then with divine power crystals the consumption was extremely small. However, the ownerless divine power used when breaking through to True God could not be used with divine power crystals because the absorption was too slow and utterly unsuitable. That liquid divine power which could be absorbed instantly was enormously expensive. Even if a Chaos Sovereign exhausted all his wealth, he would probably still struggle to reach a dozen light years. This plant-type lifeform had indeed reaped an incomparable advantage. What is most infuriating is that a plant-type lifeform's divine body can grow slowly with time. After such a long period, the sect master, using earth source crystals plus the accumulation of time, has a divine body dozens of times larger than mine. Even among all the God Kings I know, the sect master's divine body is absolutely terrifying. God King Haisha looked at the life form on the moss-covered throne at the head of the hall, his eyes filled with envy. With a divine body of over 1,000,000 light years, even the Realm Beast King would have to give way. There was simply no way to outlast it. The divine power stored in their inner worlds could never be that vast. Others had to replenish while fighting, but the Haoyan sect master did not even need to replenish. He simply fought on head-on. Chen Ao could not help sighing. His old sinking water vine clone had also been enormous, but unfortunately when he achieved true God and traced all things back to their source, his essence was still human. Plant-type lifeforms were born with large divine bodies which could indeed let them compensate for their weaknesses and catch up. But growing limitlessly over time was truly impossible to counter. This time, a total of 7 people will participate in the sect wager. The Haoyan sect master ignored God King Haisha's plaintive gaze and said slowly, "However, the circumstances are rather special this time. Chen Ao wants to claim all the rewards, so according to the rules he will fight 1 against 6. If he succeeds, he will go into battle alone. If he fails, 5 of the remaining 6 will be selected." Facing 6 opponents alone was an enormous challenge. Each of them was an eternal true god who had accumulated power over countless reincarnation eras, and every single one possessed combat prowess equivalent to the early stage of a chaos dominator. Moreover, their divine bodies spanned at least dozens of light years. With 6 such powerhouses besieging Chen Ao from all sides, even his formidable combat strength would be stretched to its limits. "Haisha, do you truly believe your disciple can win? In the entire history of our Haoyan sect, no one has ever accomplished such a feat." Such duels between factions were a tradition of the origin continent practiced by nearly all divine sovereign powers. Other forces occasionally produced an exceptional genius who could outshine all rivals, but the Haoyan sect never had one. The sect's strength was respectable, yet, when compared to the nations ruled by world beast kings, it was quite ordinary. Divine sovereigns themselves were divided into high-level and peak-level tiers, and next to those superpowers that possessed peak-level or even limit-level divine sovereigns, the Haoyan sect was equally unremarkable. I have a feeling that kid Chen Ao still has some cards up his sleeve. He doesn't strike me as someone who speaks idly. The Haoyan sect master nodded without pressing further. Whatever methods the young man had, he would soon witness them with his own eyes. Very well, then let it begin. As the Haoyan sect master gave the word, the 6 warriors launched a coordinated assault on Chen Ao from different directions. They had never fought together before, yet each possessed rich combat experience and knew instinctively what role to play. None of them considered ganging up a disgrace. Since their opponent had dared to propose such a challenge, he surely possessed formidable techniques. To insist on fair play in such a life-and-death contest would be sheer foolishness. This was a contest involving resources worth a quadrillion units. Even chaos dominators would fight desperately over such a prize, let alone eternal true gods. Chen Ao gazed at the 6 opponents, and suddenly a blue light began to flicker in his eyes. The radiance carried an overwhelming pressure of willpower, spreading outward in ever-expanding waves. A will-based secret art. Not only the 6 eternal true gods, but even Sovereign Haisha and the Haoyan sect master were taken aback. Among all secret arts, will-based techniques were considered the highest grade, extremely precious, and exceedingly rare. Even the Haoyan sect had no inheritance of will-based secret arts. Judging by the look of it, this should be the divine eye art. Having lived for endless eons, and since the state of Jin was not too far from here, the Haoyan sect master recognized the origins of Chen Ao's technique. Sovereign Haisha nodded and recounted the entanglement between Chen Ao and the God King of Jin. "I see. That God King of Jin certainly had his fortune. Perhaps in the future there truly will be a chance for vengeance." They paid little further attention to the divine eye art, for it was ultimately limited to the Chaos Dominator tier at best and held no value for beings of their level. They had even obtained the legendary Liuan technique scroll before, but found it impossible to cultivate, rendering it useless. Attempts to seize inheritances happened frequently, yet genuine success was almost unheard of. On the battlefield, as the solid blue light expanded, the 6 eternal true gods suddenly felt their concentration slip away, their minds unable to focus. In fact, 2 of the eternal true gods, whose willpower barely reached the early Chaos Dominator level, collapsed unconscious on the spot, under the pressure of Chen Ao's 9th volume Divine Eye Art. Only those with mid-level Chaos Dominator willpower can resist being stunned into unconsciousness by the Divine Eye Art, and to truly withstand it one would need at least high-level Chaos Dominator willpower. Of course, even those with high-level Chaos Dominator willpower would still feel some effect, though negligible, perhaps reducing their combat effectiveness by a few percentage points. Clearly, only one of the 6 eternal true gods possessed mid-level Chaos Dominator willpower. 2 being low-level had already fainted, while the remaining 3 at mid-level were struggling desperately to resist. Only 1 is barely affected and can fight at full strength. The other 3 are divided between defending against my art and attacking, so they probably can't even bring out half their true power. Seeing the Divine Eye art achieve its intended effect, Chen Ao did not hesitate. Had this been the Liuan art, the battle might have already been won, but the Divine Eye art was still far inferior to it. Thus he would have to finish the job with his own hands. Unleashing his full strength, Chen Ao displayed combat power at the high-level Chaos Dominator tier. With a secret art at the mid-level Chaos Dominator limit, and a divine power combustion technique, an ordinary eternal true god could only hope to reach mid-level Chaos Dominator strength. But Chen Ao possessed a divine sovereign weapon, which elevated his combat power further, allowing him to reach the high-level Chaos Dominator tier. Of course, he was only barely entering the high-level tier. At the Chaos Dominator level, gaps in strength grew ever wider, and closing such a gap was no easy task. Pick the softest persimmons first. The 3 eternal true gods who could barely exert half their strength were the perfect targets. The priority was to reduce their numbers. With the Divine Eye art tilting the scales, the battle held almost no suspense. He has cultivated the Divine Eye art quite well, and his own strength has already reached high-level Chaos Dominator. Though both Divine Sovereigns found it strange that Chen Ao's combat power had inexplicably risen by half a tier, neither chose to inquire further. The battle lasted roughly a day. 4 eternal true gods conceded defeat, and the 2 who lost completely no longer had any say. Since Chen Ao has triumphed against 6 opponents, alone the right to represent us in this challenge belongs solely to Chen Ao. As he spoke, the Haotian sect master handed Chen Ao a divine power ring. This contains contributions worth 500 trillion. The reward for the victor. The Haotian sect master smiled and continued. As for additional resources, that depends on how many opponents you can defeat. There are 5 divine sovereign powers, and for every one you beat you earn another 10 million. Chen Ao bowed. Thank you, sect master. I will do my utmost to defeat all the other forces. This I believe. The Haotian sect master laughed. If you can defeat all 5 in succession, then I have the authority to grant you an additional 200 trillion in contributions every reincarnation era. If Chen Ao managed to conquer all 5 powers, the Haotian sect's territory would expand substantially. Roughly 1/5 more territory. Even after accounting for buffer zones, the benefits each reincarnation era would be incalculable. Chen Ao was not overly excited by the offer. It was not that he lacked confidence in winning 5 matches, but rather 200 trillion per reincarnation era was simply too inefficient. Given enough time, he would certainly succeed. These resources were more than sufficient to nourish his growth. Yet one reincarnation era was unbearably long, and he had no patience to wait that much time. Chen Ao soon departed alongside Sovereign Haisha. The sovereign was thoroughly delighted that his disciple had managed to defeat 6 eternal true gods. Ha ha ha, I knew you would most likely win, but I never expected it to be this easy. It was all luck. The Divine Eye art tipped things in my favor. Although the Divine Eye art had reached the Chaos Dominator level, it was in truth only effective against eternal true gods. Many powerful eternal true gods possessed equally formidable willpower, rendering the art virtually useless against them. Indeed, the Chaos Dominators who had lived through countless reincarnation eras often had wills that had reached the Divine Sovereign level. A win is a win. Combat strength is never merely luck. What we compete in is technique and foundation. Chen Ao smiled faintly. He had merely been modest. When do you plan to challenge the eternal true gods of the 5 great powers? Sovereign Haisha asked. Originally this matter did not fall under his jurisdiction, but since Chen Ao was his disciple, and also the representative of the Haotian sect this time, it was only natural for him as the master to lend his aid. Thus Sovereign Haisha would be responsible for bringing Chen Ao to challenge the 5 great powers. Of course they could also remain at the Haotian sect and wait for the others to come to them, but as the most powerful force in the surrounding region, the sect typically preferred to project strength and was unwilling to wait for others to make the first move. Let's go now. My divine body hasn't suffered much consumption. With his current strength, facing those eternal true gods was like crushing ants. Just as in his void-level days when he easily dominated those ranked in the top 200. Were it not for the fact that eternal true gods had lived for so long and accumulated absurdly massive divine bodies, he could have killed them in a single instant. Good, then I shall take you on a few trips. The realm of a divine sovereign was fundamentally different from that of ordinary powerhouses. The spatial pressure of the origin continent seemed not to exist for them at all. From True God to Chaos Dominator, a single spatial teleportation covered nearly 10,000 light-years, unless one paid an enormous price for a short burst of speed. Such bursts were possible for beings above eternal level, but they could not be sustained, and they placed an immense strain on both divine power and willpower. Divine sovereigns, however, were different. They could casually teleport millions, tens of millions of light-years. Thus divine sovereigns were incomparably faster, leaving even Chaos Dominators far behind. Once this matter is concluded, my disciple, you should be breaking through to Chaos Dominator, shouldn't you? Sovereign Haisha inquired. Yes, master. I have remained at this realm only to secure these resources. Since I am now able to break through, there is no reason to linger at this stage any longer. At any time, breaking through was a good thing, for it represented a higher realm and a stronger foundation. Right, that's a good way of thinking. Sovereign Haisha approved wholeheartedly. Those 6 little ones earlier all remained at this realm for hundreds of reincarnation eras. Most of them could have broken through long ago, but for the sake of this battle, that happens once every 10 eras, they stubbornly held themselves back. The sect challenge was unquestionably the fastest way to obtain resources. 10 million every 10 reincarnation eras, an amount that even a Chaos Dominator would struggle to earn a tenth of through other means. So they refused to break through all for the sake of accumulating divine body. But while they focused solely on accumulating divine body, they forgot that realm is everything. If they broke through and became chaos dominators, they would have far more opportunities. Having suppressed their breakthroughs for so long, they formed a habit, and in the end many of them were no longer able to break through at all. Chen Ao said nothing. This was a point he had never considered. Pressing forward boldly is also crucial. Suppressing it once or twice is tolerable, but after suppressing it for hundreds of reincarnation eras, even if they eventually break through to Chaos Dominator, they will find it nearly impossible to rise to higher realms. Sovereign Haisha explained. In a very short time, using teleportation arrays and spatial teleportation, Sovereign Haisha brought Chen Ao to Silkworm Nation, which bordered the Haotian sect. Silkworm Nation was a divine power faction, but such duels were not restricted by lifeform type. As long as both were divine sovereign powers, they contended for territory. They were greatly surprised that the Haotian sect had dispatched a single person to challenge them, but they nonetheless acted according to the rules. This time it was not a siege, but a sequential battle requiring Chen Ao to defeat 5 opponents one after another. He was unafraid of being surrounded. Not to mention fighting a war of attrition in succession. Every battle ended swiftly. Whether in sheer strength or divine body, the opponents stood no chance at all. In merely 10 days, Divine King Haisha brought Chen Ao to visit the Mo Nation, the Monli tribe, the Han Nation, and the Stone Nation. All the battles went smoothly, and with the short-tempered Divine King Haisha present, none of these powers had any chance to resort to underhanded tricks. In no more than 2 months, Chen Ao had successively defeated the geniuses sent by the 5 major powers and smoothly returned to the sect. Letting you fight them is simply bullying them. On the way, Divine King Haisha was extremely delighted. He thought his disciple had truly become invincible across the world, at least among the 20 or 30 surrounding Divine King powers. He could not think of anyone who could contend with Chen Ao. Pity that our Haotian sect only has ties with 5 powers, otherwise we could have won a few more rounds. Ha ha ha, you really don't know contentment. 5 powers is already a lot. Back at the Haotian sect, the sect master will soon distribute the resources you need. However, isn't the amount of chaos crystals you need a bit too much? Not too much, master. Your disciple's mini-universe is enormous, able to absorb a great deal of origin. Divine King Haisha smiled without saying a word. A little fellow who had just broken through not long ago. How big could his mini-universe be? The mini-universe is different from other things. 8 times out of 10 it grows through time. The Chaos Realm's greater function is to increase origin, not to expand the volume of the mini-universe. Even a divine king could not afford such extravagance. Chen Ao did not explain much. Concerning the 100,000-fold gene, saying more was pointless. A few days later, Chen Ao received a large amount of resources from the Haotian sect master. Among them were 100 billion chaos crystals, and the remaining 400 billion were earth source crystals. Combined with the previous 5 million, Chen Ao's divine body could directly expand to 5,000 light-years. He exchanged the remaining resources for chaos crystals to increase the origin of his mini-universe. With these resources in hand, Chen Ao first fully replenished the origin of his mini-universe. His mini-universe was 100 billion light-years across. Theoretically, it could absorb 100 billion chaos crystals. However, he had already absorbed 10 billion before, so this time there would be some left over. Once the origin in his mini-universe could no longer increase, Chen Ao began continuously absorbing earth source crystals, expanding his divine body to 5,000 light-years. After completing both tasks, Chen Ao began preparing to break through to Chaos Sovereign. I wonder how large my mini-universe will become once I reach the Chaos Sovereign level. Theoretically, a Chaos Sovereign's mini-universe could expand without limit. Even upon stepping into Divine King, the mini-universe would not directly surge in size. Therefore, this growth of the mini-universe was the last opportunity. Chen Ao hoped his mini-universe could expand to an exaggerated degree. Life and destruction. 2 origin forces continuously interwove around Chen Ao, and within his mini-universe the aura of the 2 origins likewise kept converging. Chen Ao began his breakthrough to Chaos Sovereign. At the same time, his mini-universe started to expand wildly. Originally 100 billion light-years across, it now directly swelled to 10 trillion light-years. I didn't expect it to increase 100-fold in one go. Is it because of the 100,000-fold gene, or because I absorbed enough origin before breaking through? Probably both reasons were at play, because with this expansion the amount of his origin actually decreased a great deal. This is good. It can save me I don't know how many reincarnation eras worth of time. However, a mini-universe of 10 trillion light-years could absorb 1,000,000 times as much origin as before. That meant he needed to replenish 100 quadrillion earth source crystals. Heavens, so that's how it is. No wonder chaos crystals are the top resource. I originally thought a mini-universe had an upper limit for absorbing origin, while the divine body could expand infinitely. Now I realize that compared to the origin of a mini-universe, the demand for earth source crystals isn't actually that extravagant. 100 quadrillion chaos crystals, if used to expand his divine body, Chen Ao's body could directly grow to 1 billion light-years. The Haotian sect master's divine body of nearly 1,000,000 light-years was already invincible. So what did 1,000,000,000 light-years signify? The mini-universe and the divine body are essentially on equal footing. As long as resources are sufficient, the divine power that a divine body can store is not inferior to that of a mini-universe. Originally he had thought the divine body was merely for temporary storage, while the mini-universe was the major source for replenishing divine power. Now looking at it this way, the upper limit of a divine body was no smaller than that of a mini-universe. The difficulty of replenishing origin is too great. No wonder those divine kings are so wealthy with divine bodies only tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of light-years. Even 1,000,000 is rare. It wasn't that they didn't have more resources. Rather, they poured most of their resources into their mini-universes. After all, a larger divine body only offered some advantage in battle, whereas a powerful mini-universe not only stored more divine power, but also allowed one to comprehend the rules more clearly. So is it actually acceptable for a divine king to have a divine body of only 5,000 light-years? As long as the consumption rate wasn't too outrageous, one could fully replenish through the Chaos Heart and the inner world. A great deal of information flashed through Chen Ao's mind, and after his mini-universe broke past the limit of 100 billion light-years, the true God Heart within him also underwent a transformation. The true God Heart evolved into a Chaos Heart. This Chaos Heart was like an ultra-miniature mini-universe. Inside it was not merely Chen Ao's soul, but something that seemed to have transformed into chaos itself, ready to evolve into a miniature universe at any moment. This is the feeling of a Chaos Sovereign. The soul is completely wrapped in origin, so endurance is greatly increased. And because of the connection to origin, replenishing divine power is tens of millions of times faster than an eternal true God. The mini-universe stabilized and the Chaos Heart was successfully formed. The process of Chen Ao's breakthrough to Chaos Sovereign had completely come to an end. If Chen Ao so wished, he could directly rely on his will to seize control of the primordial universe. Before him, the primordial universe was like a young child, utterly incapable of resistance. However, just like Zuoshanku, once one's realm is high enough, the primordial universe can no longer help. His breakthrough had been too smooth. By drawing on the mini-universe origin of a divine king, not only his will had broken through but his realm as well. Since I don't need it, I'll leave the primordial universe to Luofeng. With the primordial universe's help, he will probably become a sovereign very soon. At this moment, inside Chen Ao's mini-universe, Chen Ao's divine power avatar stood at the source position of the mini-universe like an eternal being. The humans who had multiplied for unknown generations had long been forbidden from entering this place. However, the commotion this time was too great. The volume had instantly expanded 1,000,000-fold, meaning the number of human powerhouses it could accommodate would also be exceptionally extraordinary. Senior brother, has your realm already surpassed the generals? Luofeng looked at Chen Ao's avatar above. Yes, I just broke through. Chen Ao looked at Luofeng. Didn't you say last time that you smoothly broke through to the 100,000-fold gene? Why haven't you broken through? Luofeng said, Senior brother, I do plan to break through, and I'm afraid it will directly reach Void True God. Lacking the accumulation of the destruction origin of the realm beast king, Luofeng was not yet sufficient to break through to eternal true God. That's great. Once you break through, you can go challenge the cycle of reincarnation and a new world will open before you. Indeed. But if our true bodies cannot meet, then in this cosmic sea we will never see each other again. Their mini-universes could not stick together, and not only could they not approach each other, they had to stay extremely far apart. Because when a realm breaks through, the mini-universe expands explosively. If at that moment there were other mini-universes nearby, it would be awkward. And since their avatars could not leave their mini-universes, if their true bodies could not meet, they would never see each other again. So you came to say goodbye, but I think we will meet again very soon. Huh? Senior brother, what do you mean? Ha ha ha, teachers Washanku will tell you. Besides, there are many things I cannot say right now. He wanted to tell Luofeng, I found the devouring nation. We can destroy them together when you come, but he couldn't say it. However, this was not important. Once Luofeng arrived at the origin continent, he would naturally inquire about the devouring nation. As Luofeng possessed the Liuan art, his strength would not be much weaker than his. If Chen Ao didn't have the advantage of his realm, he might not even be able to defeat Luofeng. Only upon reaching the Divine King realm would he have a chance to contend with Luofeng. However, he believed he would still be the ultimate victor. After all, he had an external cheat. No matter how formidable the Liuan art was, it was only formidable at the Divine King stage. Moreover, a will-based secret art could only have a slight effect against a will of equal level, and could not overturn the gap in strength. As the owner of an external cheat, his strength was stable and could add an entire rank. This was far more formidable than the Liuan art. Luofeng chatted with Chen Ao for a long time. Watching Chen Ao break through again and again, it would be false to say Luofeng wasn't anxious. After all, Chen Ao was the person he had resolved to catch up to ever since their first meeting. Yet he was still a Lord of Laws, while Chen Ao had already broken through to Chaos Sovereign. The gap between them could no longer be measured. Even if he could instantly break through to Void True God, he would still fall far behind. Thus Luofeng was anxious. To catch up to Chen Ao, he had to go to the origin continent, for only there could he find more resources and a greater stage. Senior brother, after this parting, who knows how many reincarnation eras it will take before we meet again. I hope we brothers can reunite soon. Don't worry, I think we will meet very soon. That side is simply too vast. Who can say for sure whether we'll meet? Unless one reaches the level of Divine King Jin, it's difficult to roam freely over there. Chen Ao smiled without saying a word. Luo Feng stayed in Chen Ao's mini-universe for a long time before going to break through. Chen Ao meanwhile told the Chaos City Lord that he could do his best to migrate humanity into his mini-universe. After all, there was plenty of origin here, far more practically beneficial than the primordial universe. The primordial universe was immense, but the origin each living being could share was far too scarce. Far inferior to Chen Ao's mini-universe. Chen Ao successfully broke through to Chaos Sovereign, and his miniature universe expanded to a terrifying scale of 10 trillion light-years. This meant that Chen Ao's ceiling was extremely high. However, that ceiling required a vast amount of chaos crystals to fill. Without sufficient source essence, this latent potential could not reveal itself. Chaos crystals and earth source crystals, they are all money. I have the urge to rob everything in sight. Chen Ao absorbed all the remaining chaos crystals, allowing his source essence to improve further. Yet compared with a ceiling expanded a millionfold, the source essence those chaos crystals brought was not even a single hair. Next, Chen Ao began to comprehend secret arts. Having now broken through to Chaos Sovereign, he possessed a divine power combustion secret art of the Chaos Sovereign level. With this plus mid-tier Chaos Sovereign secret arts and a divine king weapon, he had barely crossed into peak Chaos Sovereign level strength. In a prolonged battle with the aid of the Qijinsi, he could display even slightly stronger strength. What he needed to do now was to deduce his secret arts up to the high-tier Chaos Sovereign level. Having just broken through, and with the amount of source essence increased, a rapid breakthrough was likely. Time continued to flow unchanged since time immemorial. Some were born, some died, some fell, and some broke through to new realms. In the universe C where Chen Ao dwelled, this reincarnation era had already passed. Chen Ao, the era of us humans is over. Chaos City Lord watched the primordial universe beginning to collapse before him with a complicated expression. Chen Ao could not see it, but he knew what had happened. No, this is only the beginning. Chen Ao said. Chaos City Lord looked at Chen Ao in bewilderment. No matter how powerful our humanity was in the previous reincarnation era, once a new reincarnation era is born, we can no longer enter the primordial universe. Is there a problem with saying that the era is over? Although the world beasts had been dealt with long ago, Chen Ao had pulled a slick trick. At every moment, at least several hundred universe masters remained within the gene world. In this way, as long as living beings were within the gene world, the primordial universe could not make the gene world leave the universe C. Otherwise, it would be slaughtering those universe masters. The primordial universe had no right to obliterate anyone, so it was forced to allow the gene world to remain. And so the gene world stayed beside the universe boat. Through the primordial universe's nurturing and the gene world's tempering, humanity gave birth to far too many true gods. And the source essences of those true gods' miniature universes originally came from the primordial universe. Why did the primordial universe dislike true gods? Because true gods had to take away a share of its source power. It was also for this reason that the primordial universe ended this reincarnation era earlier than in the original timeline. Now that humanity had become the life forms of the second reincarnation era, the primordial universe no longer needed to be responsible for them, so it could naturally deal with them as it pleased. The instant the reincarnation era ended, the gene world had already broken away. Because of this, humanity lost quite a few universe masters. However, it was all worth it, because having lost a great deal of source essence, this primordial universe was very weak. The primordial universe's weakness represents an opportunity. When the new reincarnation begins, teacher, you can have Luo Feng take possession of the primordial universe. As Chen Ao said this, waves of pressure suddenly appeared around him. It was a warning from the primordial universe. Chen Ao smiled. The primordial universe's will is panicking. However, Chen Ao did not mind. His true body was not in the primordial universe, so he did not need to worry about being suppressed. Besides, he was only speaking. He did not actually have to do anything. This kind of matter was better left to Luo Feng. Can it really work? Chaos City Lord had also wanted to mention possession, but feeling the oppressive pressure of the primordial universe, he suddenly fell silent. Right? Once Luo Feng succeeds, we only need to cast some human souls into the primordial universe. Through Luo Feng's control over the primordial universe, humanity can rapidly reproduce. In no more than a few dozen epochs, the entire universe will belong to humanity. Chen Ao had long ago worked out this plan. Of course, his first consideration was for himself. After all, when it came to comprehending the source of destruction, there was Sayak. But when it came to comprehending the source of life, he was not sure he could do it. If he could not, then he would take possession of the primordial universe. Yet his progress had been too fast. Now that he was already a chaos sovereign, he no longer needed to possess the primordial universe to comprehend the source of life. Therefore, this opportunity was left to Luo Feng. Can it really work? Chaos City Lord said joyfully. Their human race had already produced several void true gods, and they even had Chen Ao's colossal miniature universe. Fully 10 trillion light-years. Yet, compared with a supersized life form like the primordial universe which was specially responsible for nurturing life, they were still far behind. Even if Chen Ao's realm was essentially higher than the primordial universe, their functions differed, so they could not be compared. It was like a chaos sovereign being able to easily slay an eternal true god yet struggling to shake the eternal true god's miniature universe. Having a high realm and strong power did not mean you were omnipotent. Yes, moreover, because of what I did, our humanity has produced several 100,000 true gods. The primordial universe is very weak, so the difficulty of possessing it is at least 30% lower than normal. Luo Feng's will has already met the requirement, so in all likelihood, he will succeed. Even if he fails this time, after a few more attempts he ought to succeed. Good. This is wonderful. Chaos City Lord had devoted everything to the development of humanity. Although he knew that without the gene world, the humans of the next reincarnation era would probably be weaker than those of this one. More lives represented more opportunities. I'll go find Luo Feng right away. As long as Luo Feng succeeds, the universe C will be ours in the future. Chen Ao remained silent. This was a good thing, but it might not be entirely good. Without conflict, development would also be difficult. In the future, humanity would likely engage in unrestricted mutual slaughter. To cultivate strong experts, this was inevitable. In fact, during this reincarnation era, because powerhouses had emerged so quickly, and in such great numbers, civilization advanced very slowly. After all, everyone charged down the road to becoming a powerhouse. Everyone longed to become strong, leaving no room for the people at the bottom to apply their wisdom. The stronger one became the more backward one. This was true. Chen Ao's divine power avatar still sat upright in the source land of his miniature universe. He could not see anything outside, but he already knew what would happen next. Luo Feng succeeding in taking possession of the primordial universe is inevitable. This primordial universe will become humanity's birthplace. As long as Luo Feng does not fall, the birth of void true gods will probably only become more and more extraordinary in the future. Of course, there was also a cycle to this. The primordial universe's source was finite. In every reincarnation era, too many true gods were born, consuming much while replenishing little. In the end, this primordial universe would collapse. The primordial universe's duty was to nurture souls. That could not be changed. And by suppressing the number of powerhouses to reduce the drain on its source, it was actually prolonging its own lifespan. Every gain has its cost. Time continued to flow. After roughly tens of thousands of years, Chaos City Lord excitedly told Chen Ao that Luo Feng had successfully taken possession of the primordial universe. Now Luo Feng had taken control of the primordial universe's consciousness and could allow the current humans to continue entering the primordial universe to reproduce. Of course, those powerhouses definitely could not enter. Only very weak life forms could, preferably those below star level. Under the escort of true gods and the protection of Luo Feng's will, those weak humans safely entered the primordial universe. These several 100 million humans would become the sparks. The primordial universe had just been born, so there were no life forms yet. For the first tens of thousands of years, Luo Feng could simply nurture only humans and later nurture some special life forms and so on. As for other life races, Luo Feng also had to nurture them. That was his duty as the primordial universe and could not be changed. However, Luo Feng could delay the appearance of those life forms. Humanity could develop for tens of thousands of years first. With complete inheritances and boundless resources in the primordial universe's early stage, human development would certainly be extremely fast. Perhaps in just tens of thousands of years they could even produce universe masters. By then the other life forms would still be primitive beings who drank blood and ate raw flesh, far from even the ape level. How could they fight? The primordial universe had to give birth to these life forms, but if humanity afterwards wiped out all those newborn life forms, naturally Luo Feng could not be blamed as the primordial universe. Even worse, Luo Feng would tell humanity exactly where those other life forms were being nurtured. This was even more brazen than a dragon swooping down to hover in one's face. Human powerhouses continued to be born. Even those who were merely immortals or world masters were super experts of the universe. Those immortals traveled to every corner of the universe, eradicating the newborn life forms and lowering the probability of other races producing powerhouses. And in this manner, after several 100 million years, humanity already had a batch of universe masters and a few true gods. In this situation, they could completely seize the entire primordial universe. Time really flies. But next it will be humanity's own internal conflicts. Once external threats were gone, one human powerhouse after another would become divided by interests and then come to blows. Humanity would split into many cosmic nations fighting among themselves. Chaos City Lord and the others did not care about this. No matter how they fought, they were still human. Moreover, what humanity needed were powerhouses. No matter how many weaklings died, it did not matter. A crop was born every few decades. There were simply too many. Chaos City Lord often shared all of this with Chen Ao, and seeing humanity once again dominate the entire primordial universe, he was overjoyed. Ha ha ha. This way, in every reincarnation era there will only be human powerhouses. Other races will never have the chance to arise. Chen Ao smiled without a word. There was no perfect situation. It looked fine now, but this primordial universe of Luofeng's might in 10. After 10 or 100 reincarnation eras it would collapse completely. If it collapses, then let it be. In such an immense span of time, Luofeng is surely bound to have comprehended the complete essence of life. That being so, even if the primordial universe reverts to its origin, all is well. In the future, once the primordial universe recovers and can nurture life once more, other powerhouses may be permitted to take possession and be reborn. Only that interval was likely to be unfathomably long. Master, you too should become a void powerhouse. Only by attaining void can one endure eternally across the ages. Chen Ao, you need not worry about me. I feel that I am already extremely close to a breakthrough. With 2 reincarnation eras still remaining before my appointed limit, I am certain to attain void. Those early true gods had not anchored their minor universes within Chen Ao's minor universe. Therefore, once they failed to break through within 3 reincarnation eras, they would have to abandon their minor universes and entrust their origins to the minor universes of other powerhouses. Chen Ao nodded and made no further remark. If all else failed, he could have Chaos City Lord's soul cast itself into the primordial universe and reincarnate, beginning anew from the first reincarnation era. After all, the primordial universe had been founded by their own clan. Theirs to toy with as they pleased. On the human side, everything had already been pushed to the extreme. Chen Ao paid it no further attention, for even Chaos City Lord had ceased to care. The dominance of humanity across countless reincarnation eras had already been decreed by fate. At the Haoyan sect, Chen Ao's true body slowly opened his eyes. This period of enlightenment has truly been long. Nearly a full reincarnation era. If the era of Chen Ao's birth were counted as the first reincarnation era, then the second reincarnation era had already advanced into its middle stage, and the second generation of human true gods already numbered in the tens of thousands. This time Chen Ao's cultivation had directly reached the pinnacle of the Chaos Dominator realm. With secret arts at the ultimate Chaos Dominator level, and combined with a host of techniques, his strength was now sufficient to cross blades with Haisha Divine King. Haisha Divine King was utterly astonished. The gulf between a Chaos Dominator and a Divine King was after all quite vast. What sort of fortune could possibly enable one to leap from the limits of the Chaos Dominator realm to the threshold of a Divine King? Could my disciple have obtained a legacy from a supreme powerhouse like Yuan? Otherwise, even those pinnacle Divine Kings could absolutely never accomplish such a feat. Haisha Divine King was both alarmed and overjoyed. Chen Ao's growth had been so swift. Did this mean he now had a helper at his side? If a clash with a Divine King erupted one day, this disciple could offer support or even join him in wiping out the enemy. Disciple, your present weaknesses are your divine body and the origin of your minor universe. Once you make up for these 2 shortcomings, you will be no different from a genuine early-stage Divine King. Chen Ao was equally frustrated, for this was the greatest obstacle of all. His resource consumption was only 1/8 or even 1/10 of other powerhouses. Yet the total amount he required was still horrifyingly enormous. Often in the quadrillions or even tens of quadrillions. Even the Haoyan sect would struggle to produce such sums. A divine body of 5,000 light-years is by no means insignificant, but it is still far smaller than that of a Divine King. Furthermore, you have no inner universe. Relying solely on your minor universe to replenish divine power puts you at an immense disadvantage in battle. Therefore, you must find resources to compensate. Chen Ao nodded. A Divine King with an inner universe at his disposal stored far more divine power than he ever could. His divine body had already been smaller than theirs to begin with. If anything, the gap had only widened. What a pity, our Haoyan sect is still somewhat too small. Had our sect a pinnacle or even an ultimate Divine King overseeing it, producing 100 quadrillion resources for you would still be achievable. Pinnacle Divine Kings and ordinary Divine Kings are simply on 2 completely different planes. The former can suppress the might of several hundred Divine Kings. The latter can match dozens of Divine King factions. Thus their resources are naturally abundant. Their Haoyan sect was only a little better off than the weakest Divine King faction. It could hardly sustain a 4th Divine King. Master, I have already thought of a method. Perhaps it is worth a try. What method do you have? Only a trial really. Who knows, it might just work. Chen Ao let out a sly, sinister smile. But before that, I hope Master will allow me to once more experience the evolution of your inner world. Without a second word, Haisha Divine King drew Chen Ao straight into his body. As Haisha's disciple, Chen Ao was deeply trusted by Haisha. Chen Ao too was grateful for that trust. After all, his strength was in no way inferior to Haisha Divine King's. He was only far behind in a drawn-out war of attrition. However, now that Haisha Divine King had brought him into the land of origins, Chen Ao need only strike with his full strength to have a chance at destroying Haisha's inner minor universe. Without that minor universe, Haisha Divine King would at best never advance another step and at worst fall then and there. Chen Ao already knew what it took to become a Divine King. For Divine Kings, they must comprehend a rule. Yet that rule belongs to the self. it is one's own path. For example, what Haisha Divine King had comprehended was essentially a rule of repaying kindness with kindness and vengeance with vengeance. He had devoted his life to that rule, pressing ever forward for its sake, and ultimately became a divine king. By similar token, Jin Divine King, loyal to artifact refinement and laboring at it unceasingly, eventually became a divine king. Chen Ao needed to discover his own path, and with it as the root evolve his chaos heart into an inner universe. As for how that evolution was to be accomplished, he still needed to truly experience it for himself. Otherwise, even if he found his own path, he would be unable to complete the transformation, and could hardly become a divine king. In this regard, even an inherited legacy was nowhere near as direct as genuine comprehension gained from an actual inner universe. Under 10,000-fold acceleration, Chen Ao spent hundreds of millions of years in enlightenment before finally bidding farewell to Haisha Divine King. Disciple, although I know not what the method you speak of is, I hope you will regard the preservation of your life as the foremost priority. So long as you do not fall, there will always be a chance to grow stronger. Haisha Divine King looked upon this little one, who having lived little more than a single reincarnation year already possessed the combat power of a divine king, and could not help fearing that Chen Ao was overreaching in his haste. Rest assured, master. Is not my undying blood still in your keeping? So long as that blood remains safe, I shall never die. Haisha Divine King nodded. Even so, if you were to be revived, your chance of becoming a divine king would be halved. Master, have faith in me. Ha ha ha. A hearty, unbridled laugh rang out, and Chen Ao vanished without a trace. Sigh. I hope he may secure a better future. Such a genius. I have never even heard of one. In barely a single reincarnation year, he already wields divine king-class power. Fearsome indeed. In the beginning, Haisha Divine King had been heavily calculative, but with time Chen Ao proved perfectly to his liking, and their feelings for each other grew ever more intimate. Now, watching Chen Ao set out upon the road of other divine kings, he felt profoundly worried. Every divine king must struggle for resources and challenge many factions along the way. Many die in the attempt, but those who survive all emerge stronger. As for Chen Ao, after leaving the Haoyan sect, he transformed directly into a beast force lifeform, and then made for the Ken nation. 1,000 years later, Qingyuan Dominator, the third-ranked powerhouse of the Ken nation and a figure at the peak of the Chaos Dominator realm, was defeated by a mysterious beast force dominator. The Ken nation was commanded to surrender 300 billion Earth source crystals. That was equivalent to 3 quadrillion resources in contribution. The divine king of the Ken nation struck out in fury, but the mysterious powerhouse slipped away. In the aftermath, the Ken nation was extorted for 500 billion Earth source crystals. With even a divine king unable to slay him, the Ken nation could only bow its head and hand over the resources. Subsequently, this mysterious beast force powerhouse paid a call to every major faction one after another, save only the Haoyan sect and the Jia nation. In the end, all the major factions obediently handed over resources befitting their status. The amount was assessed by the number of divine kings. They boasted one divine king, meant roughly 10 million, and if the territory were relatively expansive, additional tribute would be levied. Throughout this process, very few people actually perished. This mysterious beast force powerhouse seemed rather disinclined to forge a blood feud with any particular side. Moreover, his demands were not especially high. 200 or 300 billion Earth source crystals or chaos crystals was something everyone could afford to produce. As for why a beast force lifeform would covet these resources, of course it was because they were hard currency. Calling them the supreme currency of the realm would not be amiss. In this entire ordeal, the only powerhouse to fall was Huiji Dominator of the Manli tribe. It appeared that because the Manli tribe resisted too fiercely, a single ordinary dominator had been slain. The Manli tribe could only swallow this grievance. Over 100 epochs later, Chen Ao returned to the Haoyan sect. By this time, his divine body had reached a staggering 50,000 light-years. Haisha Divine King did not ask any questions. He had his suspicions but voiced none. He only admonished Chen Ao to take care. Master, next I must venture to far remoter places, both to accumulate resources and to seek the chance for a breakthrough. I hope Master will look after himself, and if danger should arise, remember to notify my incarnation, and I will hurry back at once. Ha ha ha. I, Haisha, have never borne enmity with anyone in my entire life. What danger could there be? Chen Ao rolled his eyes. You've gone and offended every divine king of the neighboring factions, haven't you? Chen Ao said no more and simply conversed with Haisha Divine King for a long while. Disciple, when you have time, come back and visit more often. The Qiyuan continent is far too vast. If you journey too far away, it becomes all too easy to forget many things. The souls of powerhouses are exceedingly powerful, but the longer time passes, the more memories accumulate, and the more memories there are, the more must be forgotten. Otherwise, even a powerhouse's soul cannot sustain the burden. Master, rest assured I will. Chen Ao cast Haisha Divine King a deep lingering glance, and then directly changed his life aura, becoming an entirely different person. And just like that, he left the Haoyan sect. If I pose as a solitary and powerful chaos dominator, any faction that is not an exceptionally strong divine king force should be willing to do me a favor, right? Pay money to ward off disaster. Haisha Divine King shook his head and paid it no further heed. Chen Ao's ability to survive had already been proven. As long as Chen Ao did not court death by provoking divine kings beyond his measure, he would come to no harm. Chen Ao meanwhile journeyed north the entire way. It must be said that being able to change his aura at will gave Chen Ao countless conveniences. He could frequently switch up his aura to avoid being hunted down by the countless people he had offended. Moreover, his cultivation realm was an even greater umbrella of protection. With strength at the early God King stage, he could trade blows with the vast majority of God Kings and still escape with ease. Add to that the fact that he was not actually a God King. The opposing God Kings did not have to worry about Chen Ao seizing territory and clashing with them forever. So when faced with his extortion, they could only hold their noses and accept it. If they did not accept it, what could they do? They simply could not find where Chen Ao was. Except around the Haotian sect, when dealing with other God King powers, Chen Ao would extort only one out of every 2 or 3 factions, then flee and change his appearance. Gradually the matter of Haisha God King, having a disciple at the Haotian sect, was forgotten. After all, if someone does not make a move for a long time, everyone forgets about him. Half a reincarnation year had passed since Chen Ao left the Haotian sect. Traveling north the whole way, he had finally arrived at the Sure Kingdom. After such a long time rushing east and west, I have finally reached the Sure Kingdom. The Chiyuan continent was immense. Fortunately, the distance between the Sure Kingdom and the Haotian sect was not especially absurd, otherwise merely traveling would have taken dozens of reincarnation years. Arriving here in half a reincarnation year already counted as very fast. After all, he had needed to extort many factions along the way. Along the way he had extorted as many as 300 God King factions, earning a terrifying amount of resources. 100 trillion Earth Source crystals and Chaos crystals. If converted into sect contributions, that would be 100 quadrillion contribution points. Back then the contribution reward for participating in faction wars had been only 5 quadrillion, 200 times less than the resources he had extorted. Now his divine body had successfully reached 500,000 light years, and he was no longer far behind the Haotian sect master. His origin source had also been greatly expanded, and his talent was increasing with every passing moment. The divine power stored in his mini-universe had reached more than 8 million light years. Once a fight broke out, as long as it lasted long enough, he could obtain an enormous supply of divine power. I wonder where Luo Feng has gotten to. Over the years, he had not had the energy to contact Luo Feng. On the few occasions they did contact each other, each would report his own location, and the other would say he had never heard of it. The Chiyuan continent was vast, and no unified power had ever appeared there. Thus there was no notion of east, west, north, or south. Since everyone's frame of reference was different, directions were utterly chaotic, let alone distances. With so many God King powers, identical names were possible once they were too far apart. Fortunately, according to Luo Feng, his opportunities had been excellent, and he had already reached the Chaos Sovereign realm. By seizing the primal universe and relying on his formidable willpower, he had broken through realms very quickly. After arriving in the territory of the Sure Kingdom, Chen Ao sent people to contact Luo Feng. He and Luo Feng could not meet in person, so they had to ask powerful beings in the universe to relay messages. Luo Feng, I have already reached the Sure Kingdom. According to Masters Washan Ku's description, the place I am in is indeed that Sure Kingdom. Earlier he had roughly confirmed the information from Haisha God King. Now, based on the accounts of the Sure Kingdom's experts, the 3 sovereigns of the Sure Kingdom were indeed Washan Ku's enemies. There had been no mistake. Ah, senior brother, you've already arrived. Luo Feng was astonished. He had still not even found out where the Sure Kingdom was yet. Chen Ao had already reached their destination. They had agreed to strike together against the Sure Kingdom. Senior brother, what realm are you at now? Chaos Sovereign. Well, just slightly stronger than an ordinary Chaos Sovereign, by a tiny bit. Haha, senior brother, I've caught up to you again, and I feel I've already found the path forward. I'm not far from God King. Chen Ao looked at Luo Feng and nodded with gratification. Before the God King stage, Luo Feng's conditions had been even better than his, so it was no surprise that he could catch up. Then I'll wait for you near the Sure Kingdom. Once you've confirmed the location, we'll meet up. Alright, senior brother. I'll do my best to find out where the Sure Kingdom is. After that brief exchange, Chen Ao took the Sure Kingdom as his center, and began wandering the surrounding area to exact tribute. When it came to resources, no one would ever feel they had too many. He still lacked far too much. Chen Ao began sweeping through the surroundings, even disguising himself as some Chaos Sovereigns of the Sure Kingdom, to provoke incidents on purpose, even killing experts of other factions. Because of his ability to alter his aura, Chen Ao's ability to stir up trouble was second to none. In a short time, the relationship between the Sure Kingdom and the surrounding powers became incredibly tense. Even more exaggeratedly, whenever Chen Ao found out that a certain expert of the Sure Kingdom had a grudge with an expert of another faction, he would disguise himself as that expert and openly slay the opponent. In half a reincarnation year, the Sure Kingdom had inexplicably offended countless people. It had bitter grievances it could not voice. Fortunately, the Sure Kingdom had 4 god kings, and was second to none in the surrounding area. Chen Ao's tricks could at most keep the Sure Kingdom frantically running about. They could not shake its roots. As long as the Sure Kingdom remained peaceful at home, there was nothing to worry about. And in order not to alert the enemy, Chen Ao did not make trouble directly in the Sure Kingdom. Instead, he visited more than 1,000 surrounding factions, and his divine body reached a terrifying 2 million light-years. The origin of his mini-universe had also increased to a massive extent. Senior brother, I've already arrived at the Sure Kingdom. On that day, Luofeng had someone deliver the message. Chen Ao perked up at Luofeng's message. Luofeng, I've been waiting for you for ages. Wait for me a while in the Sure Kingdom. I'm still a bit far from it right now. Senior brother, why did you go so far? There's a reason. In fact, it was not all that far. In just tens of millions of years, he could hurry back to the Sure Kingdom. With his experience, returning to the Sure Kingdom was still quite quick. Luofeng waited in the Sure Kingdom for 30 million years before reuniting with Chen Ao. Senior brother, long time no see. Luofeng looked at Chen Ao with deep emotion. Back then they had walked out of Earth's genius battle together and parted ways in the cosmic sea. Now more than a reincarnation year had passed. Chen Ao was not as sentimental as Luofeng. How is your strength? The Sure Kingdom has 4 sovereigns. If our strength is insufficient, I'm afraid we won't be able to deal with them. Ha ha ha, I can break through to the God King realm at any moment. Moreover, with the Lai Yuan technique, I can easily suppress God Kings of the same rank. If it comes down to it, I can hold off 3 God Kings. Killing a God King was extremely difficult. Back then, when the Sure Kingdom had 3 sovereigns, they still could not keep that bogus God King Zhuoshan Ku. Speaking of Zhuoshan Ku, Chen Ao looked at a Chaos sovereign beside him. Master Zhuoshan Ku. Chen Ao looked at this life form, whose features were somewhat similar to Zhuoshan Ku's, and was rather surprised. Ha ha ha, Chen Ao, it really is me. After I was reborn, I quickly reunited with Luofeng. Zhuoshan Ku laughed heartily. However, for me, breaking through to God King will take a bit of time. And even if I do break through at most, I can help you hold back 1 God King of the Sure Kingdom. Chen Ao nodded casually. He had only hoped Luofeng would help him. As for Zhuoshan Ku, he had never counted on him. Master, you are the one in charge of refining treasures. Forget about fighting. I think you should help us refine some treasures instead. That's simple. Zhuoshan Ku waved his hand grandly. As a Chaos Sovereign now, he could forge even top-grade God King treasures. Hearing this, Chen Ao took out a huge pile of all kinds of treasures. These treasures startled Zhuoshan Ku and Luofeng tremendously. What Chen Ao had taken out was too much, really too much. Senior brother, what exactly did you do? I'm afraid even a God King faction couldn't produce these treasures right. Although Earth Source Crystals and Chaos Crystals were the hard currency of the Qiyuan continent, that did not mean other treasures were not precious. A single God King treasure was worth several hundred million, or even several billion Earth Source Crystals. It was only because treasures were not needed in large numbers. A powerful expert needed at most a few treasures, that their value did not seem so exaggerated. But once the number grew, for example, the treasures Chen Ao had brought out were enough to forge tens of thousands of God King weapons. It became truly terrifying. Even if a God King faction were emptied out, it might not be able to produce this much. Just so. After adventuring for a bit more than a reincarnation year, my harvest is only a dozen or so times this. Luofeng and Zhuoshan Ku had thought Chen Ao would call it his entire harvest. They never expected it was only about 1/10 of it. This was too exaggerated. Senior brother, you're still such a humble bragger. Luofeng gave Chen Ao a long look. Sure enough, a leopard cannot change its spots. More than a reincarnation year had passed and Chen Ao was still the same. They're all useless. Chen Ao waved his hand unconcerned. Masters Zhuoshan Ku, I've collected the finest treasures, so you must help me refine the finest treasures. Chen Ao's requirements were not very high. For other treasures, top-grade God King quality would do, but the chess sword C and the divine sword had to be powerful enough. Zhuoshan Ku nodded. I'll study it. I'll definitely make the best treasures for you. Seeing that Zhuoshan Ku had agreed, Chen Ao stopped paying attention to him. Zhuoshan Ku was responsible for logistics and had no real status. The key figure was still Luofeng. Luofeng breaking through to God King is not a problem for either of us. But I want to know, how large is your divine body? Not large. It's only 20,000 light-years. Luofeng said bashfully, as if 20,000 light-years was something tiny. Luofeng, you've learned bad habits. Why did you have to imitate me? Ha ha ha, I just wanted to tease you, senior brother. First tell me, where did the resources to expand your divine body come from? The divine body was only one aspect. Since Luofeng's realm had improved so quickly, the origin of his mini-universe could not be lacking either. Therefore, the resources Luofeng had obtained were extremely abundant. They were comparable to the accumulation of several hundred reincarnation years by his master Haisha God King. This was highly abnormal. I got lucky. As soon as I arrived on the Chiyuan continent, I encountered a god king who had just fallen and was selecting a disciple. I ended up being chosen and I received a large inheritance. Chen Ao was dumbfounded. So this was a child of destiny. Opportunities were force-fed to him the moment he arrived. After I obtained the inheritance masters, Washan Ko found me. Then he took out the resources he had previously reserved for staging a comeback and gave them all to me. Chen Ao took a deep breath. Is there more? Of course there is. Earlier when I rushed to the Sher Kingdom, I discovered that Masters Washan Ko, as a treasure-refining grandmaster in the past, had quite a few loyal disciples. These disciples though, even if their strength is lacking, each one is remarkably wealthy. So senior brother, you get what I mean. Like hell I do. No wonder Luo Feng had acquired so many resources in such a short time. Enough to rival the accumulation of an ordinary god king over hundreds or thousands of cycle years. Damn it, this was infuriating. He had risked life and limb, yet how many resources had he managed to get? Senior brother, don't blame me. Your divine body must be enormous, right? Look at that pile of treasures. If exchanged for Earth source crystals, it could expand your divine body by 100,000 light years, right? Ah, don't mention it. I'm not as lucky as you. Your senior brother is simply destined to toil. After more than a cycle year of hard work, my divine body has only reached 2 million light years. Luo Feng was stunned. How much? 200 light years. 2 million. 200 trillion kilometers. Over 2 million light years. Luo Feng fell silent. This wasn't right. Not even a god king faction should be able to produce so much. To say nothing of one. Even 10 could not gather that much. He himself had a 100,000-fold gene and knew that such a gene consumed only 1/10 of the resources an ordinary person required. But this was still far too much. Senior brother, you're still as impressive as ever. Just average. After we refine those treasures, I'll exchange the leftovers for Earth source crystals and the Chaos Realm to improve your divine body. Senior brother, you're so good to me. Luo Feng was deeply moved. Chen Ao's resources were more than everything Luo Feng had previously obtained combined. Chen Ao gave them all to him in one breath. Alright, you two stop showing off. I've already figured out how to refine the treasure Chen Ao needs. Chen Ao had great confidence in Sitting Mountain Guest's craftsmanship, and soon followed him away. Sitting Mountain Guest turned over the surplus resources to Luo Feng to exchange for Earth source crystals. Afterward, Luo Feng's divine body smoothly elevated to a terrifying degree of nearly 300,000 light years. Following that, Chen Ao and Luo Feng broke through to the God King realm together. Both breakthroughs were utterly unremarkable. They found a desolate place where no one would notice. Once they broke through, they began comprehending secret arts on the spot. With an opponent present, Chen Ao and Luo Feng corroborated each other's insights and their strength soared. Senior brother, why is it that your strength always feels a bit greater than mine? Luo Feng asked, puzzled. Because I'm the senior brother. Chen Ao laughed heartily. In the end, the child of destiny could not outplay a cheater. After nearly another cycle era, both had reached the pinnacle of elementary god king level secret arts. Taking the next step, however, seemed fraught with obstacles. Senior brother, with our current strength, we should have a chance to wipe out the Sher Kingdom, Luo Feng said. Both were elementary peak god kings, no weaker than the master of the Haotian sect. And they each had a hidden ace. Luo Feng possessed the Liuan art while Chen Ao had his system. Even against an intermediate god king they could fight head-on, so even 4 elementary god kings in the Sher Kingdom gave them no fear. Good. Chen Ao did not refuse. Fighting for it once was well within his grasp now. It was just that killing them would be harder. However, to kill them, we have to become beast force lifeforms. Otherwise, whittling away their divine power would take too long. Even fighting for tens of thousands of years, we might not be able to kill them. After transforming into beast force lifeforms, both sides still possessed immense divine power, and with their miniature universe reserves, each had at least 1 million level of divine power. Yet this could compress tens of thousands of years of battle into 100 years. Good. Although our accumulation time has been short, our foundations are in no way inferior to those 4 of the Sher Kingdom. We can definitely kill them directly. No sooner said than done. Under Sitting Mountain Guest's watchful gaze, Chen Ao and Luo Feng turned into 2 beast force god kings, and charged at the Sher Kingdom. God kings had arrived, and 2 at that. All 4 god kings of the Sher Kingdom braced for battle. You two, where have you come from, and what business do you have in our Sher Kingdom? The Sher Kingdom had 4 sovereigns, purple, azure, white, and black, who were 4 brothers. When the Sher Kingdom had wiped out the Gene Kingdom, King Black had not yet broken through to God King. Now all 4 God Kings had assembled. Ha ha ha, my brothers and I are newly advanced God Kings, so we've come to test ourselves against the Sher Kingdom. As soon as Chen Ao said this, the 4 of the Sher Kingdom understood. These were new God Kings challenging an established power. If they succeeded, they would take over. If they failed, they most likely would not die but would have to leave. The monarchs of the Sher Kingdom cursed their luck. With so many God King powers out there, why had they chosen them? Not a trace of warning beforehand, in all likelihood, they were the first to be challenged. Since you two want to test the mettle of our sure kingdom, then go ahead and try. With that the four god kings, purple, azure, white, and black, split into two teams and separately engaged Chen Ao and Luofeng. In a war to defend a power there was no such thing as one-on-one. If the sure kingdom had 10 god kings it would be 5 against 1. Luofeng took a step forward. Ha ha ha, I'll take 3. You and you. Come here. Luofeng pointed, summoning the azure, white, and black god kings. Among the four sovereigns the purple god king was the strongest, so he was left to Chen Ao. Otherwise the four opponents certainly would not have agreed. As for the chance to fight 3 against 1, the sure kingdom was naturally happier. In their view, could Chen Ao possibly slay their eldest brother single-handedly? The chess sword C abruptly unfolded, and then Luofeng's willpower assault was unleashed as well. Seeing the chess sword C with its full 3,000 divine swords, the four god kings paid it no mind. But upon sensing Luofeng's willpower assault, their expressions shifted slightly. Although this willpower assault could not affect them greatly, it could still suppress a portion of their strength. An estimated 5% of their power was evaporated. A formidable willpower assault. Unfortunately, only one of you possesses such a secret art. If both had it, the impact would increase several times over. Willpower could stack. If Chen Ao also possessed the Liuan art, the four of them would probably lose 30% of their strength. Unfortunately, Chen Ao did not. Chen Ao did not care. The 3,000 divine swords wrapped around the purple god king. A petty trick. What can a mere domain treasure do to me? The universal power inside his miniature universe pressed down, and the chess sword C's suppressive domain instantly dissipated. As for those dancing divine swords who would give them a thought, Chen Ao and the purple god king soon joined battle. Almost instinctively all 6 ascended to an altitude of 1,000,000 light-years, so there was no need to worry about the god king's battle affecting anything below. Chen Ao swung the transparent divine sword in his hand and slashed straight at the purple god king. Though he had no secret art, his realm was sufficient, and his system did not care what kind of life form Chen Ao was. As long as it was a sword in his hand, the attack would be enhanced. Sensing the power of that one sword strike, the purple god king's expression turned cold. As this was a battle between a beast force lifeform and a divine power lifeform, the expenditure of divine power was hard to judge. Chen Ao's attack was not imposing, and he should not be an intermediate god king, so the purple god king did not overthink it. In any case, their accumulated resources were certainly greater than those of newly advanced god kings, so they would win in the end. It was just that every challenge drained away a substantial chunk of the sure kingdom's foundation. I hope these two will back off after seeing how tough we are. Otherwise it will benefit no one. The battle continued. As two different types of lifeforms, both sides fought directly. A pure contest of power, a total war of attrition. Battle time slowly slipped by, and soon the 6 had fought for over 300 years. At that moment the purple god king could no longer hold on. The millions of light-years of divine power inside his miniature universe were consumed, leaving him with less than 50,000 light-years of divine power. Second brother, help me. The purple god king transmitted. Somehow Chen Ao could endure for so long. He did not seem like a proper newly advanced god king at all. The azure god king had originally been happy to suppress Luofeng. He hadn't expected his eldest brother to be the first to seek help. But Chen Ao simply ignored the new arrival and kept chasing after the purple god king. No! The purple god king discovered in terror that they could not block Chen Ao's attacks. His divine body was being consumed at a terrifying rate. The purple god king tried to flee, but there was no chance at all. In the 321st year, the purple god king fell. The other 3 god kings were grief-stricken and furious, yet it was only when the azure god king was about to fall that the 3 sure kingdom god kings came to their senses. But by then it was already too late. The azure god king soon perished on the spot. The remaining white and black god kings wanted to flee, but they couldn't. Chen Ao was faster than both, and with the suppression of the Liuan art, the two had absolutely no opportunity. In the 353rd year, all 4 sovereigns of the sure kingdom were annihilated. Watching the 4 monarchs destroyed, sitting mountain guest laughed until he doubled over. In that moment he suddenly realized that revenge brought nothing. Chen Ao and Luofeng quietly watched it all. Senior brother, our vow is fulfilled. What do you plan to do from now on? Naturally keep getting stronger. Luofeng wasn't surprised. That was his own thought as well. By the way, senior brother, what is your personal Tao? My Tao. My Tao is immortality. The longer I live, the stronger I become. Luofeng was stunned. There is such a Tao. Of course, as long as I live long enough in the future, I can even become an existence that surpasses Yuan. Surpass Yuan. Right? To commemorate Yuan, I've named that realm the Yuan realm. Ahem, senior brother, don't just casually make up names. Luofeng could not take it anymore. What kind of terrible name is that? Keep one on. I think it should be called the Hunyuan realm. Fine, I'll listen to you. Afterward, who knows how many years passed. On the Qiyuan continent there was a place called the Haotian sect. A transparent divine sword descended from the sky. The sword radiated an endless oppressive might. The stronger one's cultivation, the greater the pressure felt. But anyone who approached the divine sword would receive a message of inheritance containing 2 supreme secret arts. It was said that even god kings could not come within 10,000 light-years of the transparent divine sword. In the void millions of trillions of light-years above the sword's tip. Senior brother, I only left a strand of will, but you left your weapon behind. Without a weapon, how will you roam the higher heavens? Ha ha ha. That sword barely reaches the Hunyuan realm, but it's useless to me. What I seek is an even stronger sword. I thought you'd say, no sword in hand yet a sword in the heart. Get lost.